our tokenism.
Do
we put these on?
We do put these on as per normal. So this is the beginning of a new era, because without either of us touching anything, that just happened automatically. What if I talk
and dominate you? Ha!
Yeah. But then if we both talk, like if you just go yada, 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 and I go yada, 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 then it just, well, hang on. Oi, why does it go to you?
Because I'm the chosen one.
It really feels like you are, actually.
Not to cause alarm, but I can't hear myself at all.
Oh. Well, that's going to require me to dive into settings I've never touched before. So give me one moment, please.
One moment.
Would you like to, I don't know, sing along?
I can entertain the crowd.
Hang on.
Surprise, we're unorganised as per usual. But if you're lucky, you might actually get the podcast on time this week. Okay. That's really loud.
Oh, okay. So you tell me, when's going to be good for you?
Go down a little bit.
Yep. Okay. How about that? What's that like? More? Okay. Yep.
More.
So as in more down or more up?
Lower.
Okay.
Lower volume.
Lower. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Up just a tiny bit.
Somewhere in there.
Tiny bit more.
How are we doing?
Keep going.
Yeah. This is riveting listening for
Little bit more.
all our podcast listeners who can't actually see that it looks different and everything's kind of weird now are going to be like, what in the world is going on with them? Mind you, that's probably how every episode starts.
It's on brand for us.
It really is.
It's on brand.
It really is.
Okay, let me just pull up my...
Okay.
Between all Jesus, sweet Jesus, lucky for that coaster because it went everywhere.
Okay. So here's the really interesting thing for me. Let's just do a quick little survey.
Okay.
In this room right now, we have operating 6 different sources of light, 2 laptops, plus a switching desk, 2 microphones, 3 cameras, and a monitor.
It's a lot.
And all of the spider web of cables between them all.
Gee, I'm so sorry. You are going to have a conniption when you see the chaos of the cabling in here.
And we do all of this so that you can talk about OnlyFans.
I wasn't even going to bring it up today.
I'm really not sure that it's worth the effort,
It
Carly.
wasn't even on my bloody list. But I do have an interesting title, which I don't think YouTube will like, so I might have to change that.
Oh,
yeah.
Do tell.
No, it was a bit sweary. I said pissing, and then I was like, maybe YouTube won't appreciate that.
People talk about the YouTube censorship thing. I'm releasing 2 videos a day at the moment, and I've been pinged twice in the last sort of 6 weeks. Once, not for any kind of swearing, it was just because I talked skeptically about climate change, which is still a bit of a no-no.
That's
on YouTube.
a bit of a taboo.
But I've talked about lots of things that other people are like, I'm going to have to use a code word. I talk about them, and it gives me approval, and I get advertisers, and
I think it depends. Like if you're bookmarked as a certain channel that could be contentious or a bit of a troublemaker.
Well, see, I actually am though. It's one of my badges of honor. I can't. So if you're trusted, then when you upload to YouTube, you're automatically monetized, and then it runs the checks, and it might take away the monetization later. But if you're not trusted, like me, then it won't monetize you. It won't allow advertisers on your videos until after the checks have been run. It does all it creates a transcript and runs AI over the script and makes sure that what you're saying is allowed. And I'm in that category, so they check me out before they allow any ads on any of my videos. And so far, I've only had two denied.
I am not yet monetized because I only have. I've got 532 subscribers.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's not bad for a new channel, and I upload 3 times a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I know we say this every episode, but it is a lot of work. I like it, but it's such a steep learning curve. Like even just this, watching. If you look back to the very first Oddcast, which please don't. It's horrendous.
Nuts.
But to where we are,
the difference now.
The amount of tech we have in this room, it's a little overwhelming at times. I'm like...
So for those that want to have a look at that little behind the scenes video that you just took, where are you going to post that?
I will post it on X.
Okay. And where do they find you on X?
They follow me on all channels at Carlz J Soda. And also the new channel for our podcast, which Topher is very bad at marketing.
I've posted about it a few times. Thank you very much.
We need to talk more. We need you guys to follow us.
Sure. This is a long-term project, Carly. People stay on my channel because I bring value to them, not because I'm blasting at them. I have to drop it in amongst all of the value that I bring with other content.
Value.
Yes.
We are valuable.
What we do is valuable, but understand people don't follow me because they want a podcast. And if I shove the podcast at them too much, I damage my brand more than I benefit the podcast. So it's a balancing act, and this is a long-term project.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys want to follow the actual channel, it's the Oddcast HQ on YouTube.
We are the Oddcast, we have a headquarters, and it's on YouTube.
We do.
And the Oddcast HQ.
Spotify, Apple.
Yes.
And I believe through Buzzsprout, it puts us on other platforms, which I've never heard of.
Now, I believe last week we hit our 14 billionth download, something like that. We've been
Actually,
growing.
our podcast on between Apple and Spotify is getting somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000 downloads a week.
Wow.
Which is a lot.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge.
And we're putting it up on the Oddcast HQ first. So if you want to actually be up to date, that's where you need to go and see it. And then I've been putting it up a week or so later on my YouTube channel. And over there, it's still getting thousands of views. So if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, get off your lazy buttocks and subscribe to the Oddcast HQ. Thank you very much. And then you won't be a week behind.
And the other thing is, guys, we need you to share the show. That's really important. If you find value in our podcast, please share it. Please tell people about it, because that's where we get bigger reach and more people come. And then, hey, we can grow and do more things and then fix all the problems that you guys keep telling us about in the comment section.
Can I just geek out for a second?
Oh, God, yes.
Because you sounded just a little too excited about that.
I love tech.
Okay. So this little machine that you can't see, it's just out of shot here, is listening to our microphones and is switching between our cameras based on which one of us is actually talking. And when both of us are talking, it'll kind of cut to the wide shot. And it's all configurable, and I've set it all up, and it was super easy to use. It was ridiculously easy to use. That little edit that I just did there was because it sat on my shot for too long, and it went, you know what, I got to throw in some variety here because it's got timers and everything in it. And so it switched to the wide shot. And if I keep rabbiting on, it'll eventually cut back to me.
No, I just need to cut in here and be like, excuse me.
Because you hadn't had a shot for a while, as soon as you made a noise, it jumped across to you. Gave you priority because you hadn't been on screen for a while. It's a ridiculously clever piece of tech. Now, 2 years ago when I set up the Aussie Wire studio, which ran for just over a year before we shut it down, this machine has replaced 4 different pieces of equipment that we needed in that studio. And that was just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We needed 4 different things, a media deck, a vision switcher, an audio desk, and a laptop. This has replaced one of the laptops I used to have to run, all built into just this one device.
It's pretty amazing how, all of this tech has now become so democratized that anyone who is interested in starting something, you can buy in, for relatively inexpensive. I mean, to be fair, we have a lot of stuff now, but the road systems are amazing. They're nowhere near as expensive as they used to be. Yeah. So when I say entry level, it's a few thousand, but still. Yeah. But there is no excuse now for not doing something.
It used to, you got to put these things in perspective. To set up a basic studio for a podcast and an interview style show, not that podcasts existed, but you go back to the 1980s, 1990s, my dad was in television, I was around television cameras when I was a kid. You knew that you had to spend at least $120,000 for a crappy setup. That was a bad setup. If you wanted anything good, you're looking at $250,000 in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Now, for less than $10,000, which is still a lot of money. I'm not denying that's still a lot of money, but for less than $10,000, and
it's more achievable now.
And we can go live to the entire world.
Yeah.
We don't need all the gatekeepers of the networks and the studios and the executives. They're all gone.
Well, this is the thing, we'll get into this when we start talking about politics, but so many people seem to believe we're still stuck 20 years ago where we don't have access to things and it's not possible. Social media and the internet, obviously, has made it so easy now to get your message out there. You can bypass all those traditional media outlets. You don't need them.
Yeah.
And by you guys sharing the podcast, it actually helps us reach more people because it's word of mouth. Word of mouth is the most powerful form of advertising there is.
So anyone can do it. We can all reach the entire world. And if you're trying to reach the entire world and they're not listening, it just must mean that you suck.
We have talked about this. If you don't do well, it's probably because there's a problem with the product. And that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you've got to refine and iterate.
I was chatting about this with my dad in the car on the way down here because I made him chauffeur drive me so I could edit. So the video that went out this morning.
Toph is this important now,
I know,
guys.
I know,
he has a chauffeur.
I know, right? No, he had things to do in Melbourne, so it worked out well. But I was talking about this with him because he was a preacher. He's been a preacher all his life. He's preached literally thousands of sermons. He's written thousands of blog posts and theological dissertations on all kinds of different aspects of the Bible and theology. And he was saying to me, how do I try and get this out to people? How do I try and do something with all it's just sitting there and no one really knows it's there? And I said, look, you've got the product in the sense that people care about this stuff. People are interested. You know, Christians, people who self-identify as Christians, a lot of them want to know more about these sorts of things. And my dad's amazing, and what he has to say is amazing, and he's very well researched and very well spoken. The problem's the packaging. He hasn't actually put it together in a format that the modern generation would recognize as, hey, I see value there. Yeah. He hasn't made it easy for them. And really, that's what changed with me at the start of this year. I was reflecting on this earlier, where I used to invest a month per video in researching, writing, hitting the road for 3 or 4 days, filming on location, then getting back into the edit suite and so forth. I would put a month into one video.
Yeah.
And that was what I valued because I wanted that level of production. I wanted to be on location. I wanted to have my research done and cross my T's and dot my I's and all of that. But the audience, the market, does not value that packaging.
No, not anymore.
They want me to tell them about the thing that was in the news last night.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they actually want to hear. And the amount of research and obviously production time that can therefore go into each video is far lower. So what I had to do was accept the reality that my product is valuable, but not when it's packaged like that. I have to package it the way that the public wants to consume it.
That's what iteration is, though. You innovate, you come up with your idea, and then you market test it. And if you get a little bit of a nibble, then you go, okay, there might be something to this. And then you just refine it. And then if it's not going as big as you'd hope, there's a couple of things that you can refine. And then if it doesn't work, well, then you have your answer. It doesn't work.
Can I ask a question to our audience here? We love starting the show very cash. We started off, I just hit record at some random point because we've been talking for an hour by the time I hit record because we're setting up the studio and today there was new gear and all the rest of it. And the podcast just starts when it starts. It just starts at the moment where I go, oh, I haven't hit record yet. And I press record and we don't do, well, hello, welcome to today's podcast.
It's usually when I'm doing something that is like...
I try to catch Carly out. I don't always succeed, but I really do try.
Blowing my nose.
Do you guys like that? Is that like, because I think it's funny and I think it's fun. And I think that our personalities and our friendship is really kind of what this is really about. We talk about the news, but really it's just about friends. So I think that adds value. But what do you think? Do you agree? To help us to iterate.
I'm happy to make an intro if you guys want an intro, but maybe you don't want it. I don't know.
And I've no doubt that Carly would make a wonderful intro. I just don't know whether having an intro makes it better or not. I don't know. You tell us.
Yeah, you tell us. I mean, it's evolved so much from what it was. We were a bit more serious in the beginning.
We were actually. We've kind of relaxed. And I like that.
Yeah.
I like that we've relaxed a little bit.
Well, do you know what's funny is I was having a chat to your mate, Ben.
Oh, yeah.
So Ben and I were having a chat and I said, because he was saying he really enjoys the podcast. And I said, look, there's moments where I feel like a dumbass because Topher knows all the policies and the micro stuff.
By no means all, just a little bit more, that's all.
No, and you've been doing this a very long time. Whereas
16 years.
I am someone who's an observer and I am an observer of culture and I'm an observer of people. I'm a photographer. That's very much my job. And I've also been in the advertising industry for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I know all the tricks of the industry. But when it comes to discussing things on this level, I've read some of the criticisms from you guys in the comments and it's like, oh, you need to be more informed. I'm like, dude, are you as more like this is the whole point of the podcast. We're getting informed. We're having a conversation as you would with mates at a pub.
And we're enjoying our chat. We're not trying to be the nightly news.
No, God, no.
The only thing missing is the beers, and that's because she doesn't drink. So, whatever.
Sauce.
What can you do?
I do have coffee, which you don't. So,
I don't have coffee. I've drunk over a litre of coffee so far today, though, because I get up at about 5 o'clock when I come down to Melbourne. So, trust me, you do not want me to have another coffee.
All right. Firstly, good news.
Good news.
Yeah.
I finally got the Roadcaster video working.
Yeah, that is good news.
This thing is sweet. So I used it yesterday to pre-record. Pastor Pat Mercedes, a pastor up in Queensland, asked me to redo a sermon that I've done previously to do with the theology of civil disobedience. It's basically my book, Good Christians Break Bad Laws, in a 1 hour sermon, obviously with a lot less detail. And so I sat down, and previously when I've done long-form content or done anything like that, I've used a webcam, and it doesn't look as nice as my main camera. But thanks to this little device here, I was able to use my good camera and have a PowerPoint presentation and be switching between them and be switching and have the little inset pictures where I could have me with the PowerPoint up in the corner, or I could have the PowerPoint with me up in the corner, or I could have it clean with just one or just the other, just by pressing buttons. And
it's very clever.
It felt amazing to do. And then when I played with it after that, I played with it to get all of this auto switching set up and discovered how easy it was to actually tell it what to do. And now it's doing it and it's kind of working. Amazing.
It's working. I'm watching it work.
Yeah.
Do you know what's interesting? This has got nothing to do with the podcast, but I hope you guys enjoy our technology chats because this is where I get really geeky. Yesterday I had my first mentor session. This is my good news.
Yeah.
And he runs this big YouTube channel himself, and he also does a paid membership mentoring thing. And he's like, oh, do you mind if I film our mentorship session? And I was like, yeah, go for it. Yep. And he was basically ripping me apart, which is great. It's exactly what I signed up for.
Yep.
But I was watching him. So this is a really established commercial photographer. Been in the industry a really long time. And I was watching how he set up everything for him. Now, obviously, he has a really big channel, so he's put a lot of time into it. But it was interesting because I would say he's doing it the old school, like when I say old school, like the more technical way. He's a sound engineer before a photographer.
Yeah.
So he had all these receivers and it was all Sennheiser, and then I was wearing a lav mic, and then there was 2 big Sony cinema cameras. And then lighting and all this sort of stuff. And then he was doing something where he was filming his screen as he's going through my portfolio and stuff.
Yep.
And then basically he dumps all the different files into a folder, and then it all gets edited, and you basically just sync the audio. So the 2 camera feeds, the microphone feeds, and then the recording from the laptop. And I was like, everyone does it a bit differently, but just seeing how cumbersome that was, this seems to be a lot simpler.
Well, this only became possible in the last year or so. This didn't previously. If you had seen, you never made it to my studio when it was the Aussie Wire. It was big pieces of gear all over the place, and it was fabulous. What it could do was amazing. But you needed all of that gear to have that capability, and now most of that capability is contained in this just little,
pretty amazing.
This little thing. But then you stop and think, well, in another 2 years, this will start to seem old already. This will have already been superseded by something better, and that's crazy.
Well, even with all the AI, and as you guys know, this is something I'm studying for my master's. Like just looking at all the different AI things. I'll give you an example. I dropped my camera about 3 weeks ago. And I don't know if I've done any damage to a lens or something. It looks fine, but everything seems to be softly focused. That could just be me. And I did a shoot on the weekend, and one of my favorite frames is just softly focused. So like if you zoom in, everyone's got a bit of a blur, but from far away it looks all right. And I was like, no, I've got to be able to fix this somehow. And I found Topaz Labs, which is a well-known AI thing. But I played with it about a year ago, and I wasn't particularly impressed for the price point. I was like, this is pretty expensive for. And like a lot of the gimmicky stuff, I'm not interested in. Like, oh, we can do this, we can add that. Yeah, cool. It's fun for a minute.
Yeah.
You know, I need to see it actually add commercial value. Otherwise, I'm not going to buy it. Sorry. Anyway, and I was like, all right, it tells me that I can upgrade this. All right. I downloaded the demo, and then I put my thing in there. You don't get to export unless you pay, but whatever.
Yeah.
And I was really pleasantly surprised. It brought this photo back from the dead, and I was like, that's pretty impressive, which is good and bad for some reasons, because it means you can fix some terrible little accidents, but it also means that if you're pretty mediocre, you can kind of...
So the moment that blew my mind was about 4 years ago. This is when I went, oh, this is going to change everything. It was about 4 years ago, because they demonstrated, I think it was Photoshop that had this capability first, but don't quote me on that. But there was some software platform where they could take a picture that had motion in it, that was destroyed by motion basically. And it could analyze the shape of the motion trails that have been left and figure out what the motion was and figure out what the picture should have looked like without that, if that motion hadn't happened.
Yeah.
And obviously the demo, of course, is going to be mind-blowing, because that's why they picked that as the demo. They've designed it to be ideal. But I just sat there and went, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
The ability to apply logic to these problems,
Yeah.
I can now see that this changes everything.
Well, it's interesting because I get asked this a lot. Are you worried as a creative about AI? And I did 2 viral videos last week, which is really cool. The first one was on AI, and I was essentially saying, like, am I worried about AI? No, because all it does is democratize mediocrity.
Yeah.
So anyone that's at a very entry level can now access these tools. Great. What that means is there's going to be a surplus of rubbish low-end content.
Yes.
Easy peasy.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. You can have a bit of fun, have a bit of a play, whatever. But what you are going to see, and this is my good news for all of you creatives out there, is that people will realize just how hard it is to make something truly remarkable. Because, yes, you might have access to the tools, but if you don't have the ability to do storytelling, or you don't have the creative idea or the concept, then you also don't have that passion and that human element that you inject into your art form. People will realize you can make stuff, but it doesn't have any impact on anyone, because it's basically junk food.
And it's all going to start to look and feel the same. Yeah. I mean, already you can go, oh, that's an AI generated image.
100%.
You don't have to see something wrong with the image. You just see what the image is and how it looks and feels, and you go, okay, yeah, I get what that is. Now, of course, that'll iterate and that'll evolve over time. But I don't believe you'll ever get rid of the human element. And one of the things that's really interesting to me, so my art is actually words. I deliver those words in video, but my art is actually words. Not so much a wordsmith. I don't claim to be up there with elite writers. I don't write beautifully necessarily, but I communicate extremely effectively. often very complex topics that people have categorized. Take the marbles video for how preferential voting works. The number one piece of feedback I get on that is, I'm 60 years old, I've been voting for 40 years and I've never understood how this works. And 9 minutes later, I get it now.
I literally, Gareth sent his mum your video and she said the same thing. She's in her 70s and she's like, I didn't know how this worked.
Yeah.
And then she sent, we put her onto Jared Rennick's policies. We put her on One Nation, just said, look at them.
Have a look.
And she was like, sounds legit.
Yep.
And then changed her vote.
Yeah, good. So that's what I do. Now, AI is incredible with words. You ask it to write a piece of poetry about a given topic. I mean, my mum did it just the other day, actually. She wanted to write a poem for my sister, who's just had a bit of a personal achievement in her life. And so she put in some really particular sort of stuff. And the AI spat out a poem that built all of that in. And, tweak a couple of things here and there. By and large, it's pretty jolly good. And it's only going to get better with time. The thing is, that is only ever going to be derivative.
Yeah.
The AI analyzes what's already out there.
Correct.
And then it can combine it in ways that are new and interesting and different. I don't deny that. But ultimately, it's a derivative of what was already there. Invention remains a very human element.
Well, this is my point. I think for true creatives who have the gift and also then are willing to work hard at harnessing that gift, you're going to become far more valuable. It's just gonna exponentially grow the creative industry because people are gonna be like, oh well, geez, this is really crappy. We're gonna need someone who can do it better.
Yeah.
And also the proficiency of that creative who not only understands the AI tools but uses them to their advantage. Boom.
That's the thing. It's the true creatives who embrace the technology as a way of... You're familiar with the 80-20 rule, right? You'll get 80% of the result with the first 20% of effort, and then it takes 80% more effort to get the last 20% of the result. Like, it's very quick and easy to become above mediocre in most things, but it's slow and difficult to become truly excellent at most things. So... And what AI does is it allows the people that have the skill, that X factor, to accelerate the rate at which they can get to that 100%, right? Because it takes away a lot of the drudgery, a lot of the other work that, I can sit there with my fingers, vision switching and changing the cameras myself. That's drudgery. Now I've got AI effectively doing it for me. Now it's not true AI. It's just an algorithm run over the top of these microphones, which technically is what AI is. But nevertheless, this is far less sophisticated. But it's taking that element out of it. What it's not doing is replacing the relationship, replacing the friendship, replacing the communication, the entertainment. It doesn't do that, and it can't.
Well, the other thing is as well, like if you're a creative that's harnessing those AI tools and it's making you more proficient, all the things that were sort of like a barrier to helping you excel because it was a economic issue. So for example, like you can't outsource your copywriting, your editing and all that sort of stuff because you just don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
It was a longer trajectory to get where you wanted to go. Whereas I use ChatGPT because I literally, if I'm driving somewhere or doing something, I don't have the time to literally sit in front of my laptop just typing all the time.
Yeah.
I could do it, but I just don't have that time in the day.
Yeah.
So when I'm walking around, whether I'm cleaning the house, walking the dogs, going to the gym, I will talk to Monty, my ChatGPT, and I just brain dump. And I'm like, all right, I want to do this today, this today, this today, this today. Give me a to-do list. Great, he gives me that. All right, on this one, I've got 2 videos I want to do. This is what I'm thinking. And I just talk to it as if it's my personal assistant.
Yeah.
And so it's still my work. I'm just brain dumping it somewhere that someone else is organizing as a personal assistant would. And it spits it back to me. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I need to plan B-roll. All right, this is what I'm thinking. And I'm doing this all as I'm talking, doing something else.
Yeah.
And that means I'm way more efficient.
But you run very quickly into the limitations of AI. So, for example, you just mentioned there AI as your personal assistant. That's nice, but you can't have an affair with it. So it can't replace a real life personal assistant, right?
Yeah.
But no, I use AI. For example, I've got a video coming out. I think it'll be tomorrow morning. It might be tomorrow afternoon's video, where I researched how much tax revenue the government made from the supermarkets. Because we're hearing all about the supermarket price gouging because they made $2.7 billion in a year, which was 2.5% of their revenue or something like that. And yet I ran the numbers and discovered just how much tax revenue the government made out of the supermarkets.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you what the number is, but I'll tell you it's multiple times what the supermarkets did. So for every dollar the supermarkets gouged off you after doing all the work and taking all the risk, the government made multiple dollars without taking any risk or doing any work.
Or
all of the taxes.
payroll?
I list them out.
Yeah, okay.
And I used Grok to help me find source documents and to try and track things down. And then where source documents weren't available, because not everything's public, to then find other industry benchmarks and estimate these numbers as best as I could. It was probably a week's worth of research done in the space of 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
Because of the power of AI. And so that's what it does, is it takes the ability of someone like yourself, someone like myself, who has the skills to ask the right questions.
Or the inquisitive mind, I would also argue.
True. But in your case, let's say with photography, it's the skills to actually know how to create a great photograph and then use the tools that are now available in the pursuit of that purpose. I know the questions to ask and the information I need to tell a great story that is relevant about our life today and politics and policy and tax. And now AI makes it faster for me to be able to get that information.
That's a really important video too, which is something that prior to AI, it would have been a lot harder for you to do.
I couldn't have justified doing it. It would have been going back to my old style of spending a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks on a single video, which just is not economically viable.
No, it's not. And it's also, for the return you get, it makes it not a financially viable decision business-wise because you're like, this is a zero-sum game. I'm not actually going to be able to sustain this long-term to get it to a point where I can then outsource. So that's why a lot of people would have bottomed out in a lot of these things because it just goes, it's just too hard. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people that started when I started 16 years ago, they dropped out 14 years ago.
Yes.
Because back then there was no ecosystem. There was no way to make it. In Australia, there was no way you could make it financially make sense 14 years ago. I kept doing it as a hobby. I kept losing money on it for over a decade. And it's only been recently that I've gone, okay, I either need to quit doing this because I've got kids now.
Yeah.
Now, every dollar, back when I was single, every dollar that I didn't make, I could just go, oh, well, that's just the price I pay for going and having fun making these videos. But now I've got kids and they're the ones paying the price because they don't get the new bicycle or they don't get whatever it may be. And I'm having to spend time earning money and then spend time making videos and then they just get my leftover time. And that's obviously not okay as a father. So I made the decision last year, I have to figure this out. I have to find a way to make this pay the bills or I'm going to have to quit. And it was in pursuit of that. It took me a little while to finally get on the right pathway. And finally this year I went, okay, I think I've got this. I think I've figured this out. And in just the last few months, it's actually started to pay some bills for me.
But on that, just for anyone who wants to get something off the ground yourselves, it's taken you 16 years to come to that conclusion.
It took me 16 years to finally realize what the question I should have been asking myself all along was.
And I don't think you can necessarily shortcut those answers either. Like I know for myself.
That's where mentoring comes in though. You're doing the right thing getting a mentor.
That's what I was going to say. My mentor yesterday, I asked him for this and I said, please be harsh because I feel as though I've hit a ceiling myself.
Okay.
I have taught myself everything I can learn from my own inquisitive mind on YouTube, right? I have a question, I ask YouTube, I ask someone, I learn it. Now I'm at the point where I'm like, well, I don't know what the questions are to ask anymore.
Yes.
Right? I need someone to break me down so I can be like, oh shit, I hadn't thought of that question. And he's not someone whose work, and I'm not saying this to put him down. It's not that I'm drawn to his work. I'm drawn to his success in his career.
Yep.
And because, my work is very subjective.
That's part of it. Yep.
And so he said to me the same thing. He's like, I'm not going to attack your work from your style because it's not my style and I don't like it, but it's your style. But he's like, I will attack the way that you're approaching this. And he gave me some really good advice. And this is something that both yourself and G have said to me. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying. I just don't know how to answer this question, which is you're doing too much. Pick the lane and stick in that lane. I'm a graphic designer. I build websites. I do photography. I'm a business mentor. I have a YouTube and I do this podcast. I'm like, wow. And he's like, who are you? And I'm like, I don't know.
Did you cry?
I didn't. I didn't.
Well done.
I had cameras on. I don't cry though. I'm not a crier.
Okay.
Unless
see,
it's
see
really
I probably
hurts.
would if I am a crier. We rewatched Up, the animated film Up.
Pussy.
When it goes, so in the very early scene, it's the two kids, the guy and the girl, who end up getting married, and then it goes silent. And there's talking early on, but then it goes silent, and for about 7 minutes, it just shows you their life story and the journey they go through.
The old heartstrings.
And oh my goodness, it gets me every damn time.
The only thing that makes me cry, and I refuse any movie that has animals getting hurt, or baby elephants. Baby elephants just do something to me that just twist my heart. Like there's something about cute baby African elephants that I just go, oh, that's so cute.
So, okay.
I'm dead inside. It's fine.
And you're okay with that?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of emotions.
Yeah.
No. Maybe I'm just suppressing some really bad trauma. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's not psychoanalyze me. But the advice yesterday was really good. He's like, you can't be exceptional at everything. So pick one thing to be exceptional. He's like, you've beaten everyone else, as in, the mediocre level. Like, his advice was, you're already in the top 20%, a bit what you said. But if you want to be exceptional, you need to be a sniper, not a shotgun.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like that analogy. So I kind of came home and I went to G on the way home. I was like, I don't know what to think. He's like, just let it marinate.
Yeah, sit on it.
And we sat down last night. We had a bit of a chat and we were talking about the podcast. We were talking about this, my YouTube. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, let's just figure out where do you want to be and we'll reverse engineer it. And yeah.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, bombshell, this will be our very last podcast because Carly is firing me because she's decided I'm not the sniper, I'm the shotgun.
No, I like this podcast. I really, do you know, this is actually, maybe you can answer this on the podcast.
Right.
This is where I struggle to reconcile. This is nothing about anything that you guys would be interested, but you can help me right now.
Let's go.
I'm a creative and a photographer, duh. But I also have a passion for being outspoken like we are doing here. And this is something I joked about off camera. My loud mouth is a compulsion. I can't control it.
I've noticed.
Yeah, just, bleh. You know, and I think the thing and I know it's right, so I have to say the thing. And there's times when I'm like, probably shouldn't have said the thing because I'm causing trouble. But I've always been a troublemaker. Just ask any of my teachers.
It's part of your brand.
Yeah, it's part of my brand. So I'm like, okay, Carlz J. Soda is the outspoken creative. She's a podcaster and a YouTuber. That makes sense. But I'm going to need an alter ego where my editorial fashion photography is because they do not sit aside each other well.
Can I disagree with you?
Okay.
Not that I know what I'm talking about in this space
Excellent.
at all, but I'm going to propose something different to you because I've kind of walked down a bit of this road before. I used to have, so on LinkedIn I was Chris Field because that was my corporate face where I was doing television commercials and corporate videos and first AD work on feature films and that sort of stuff. And then I was Topher Field, the political commentator on all the other socials. And as much as possible, I tried to keep them separate. But of course, if you're successful as Topher Field, as a political commentator, then people are going to figure out that that's you. And if they haven't figured it out, then it means you're not doing a very good job reaching people with your political commentary, right? It's interesting to me, photographers that are of the hard left have no problem being a loudmouth about how hard left they are.
This is what I'm struggling with.
Right. Okay. So I actually disagree that you need to be that you need to have an alter ego and separate those two. I think that what you ultimately create is something that in the end becomes a new problem, a different problem. And in the end, fast forward 6, 7, 8 years, you're going to be going, how do I bring these two things back together because this isn't working? I actually think, have you ever seen someone on the street who is wearing simply outrageous fashion, stuff that breaks all the rules, spots and stripes together, blah, 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 and you just look at them and go, damn, they look good, all right? And a huge part of that is just the confidence. Yeah. That they just own it. That they go, you know what, this is me. You can hate me if you want. But just know in advance that that means nothing to me. I'm going to do it anyway. Okay? And I'm going to do it anyway. And I would suggest to you that one of the options that you should not close off, that you should keep open, is that maybe the loudmouth and the photographer are not two separate things. Maybe you're a loudmouth photographer. You guys let me know in the comments. Yeah, it's hard. It is. But these I understand the reason I bring this up is just so people know. It's like we didn't just wake up one day and go, oh, we're going to be successful today. It's like there is a level of torture that is required to pull this out of yourself. Yeah. And you'll get to a point with, like I said, with AI where you could get to a level of like, you know, layman competency. But to truly get somewhere. Yeah. There is a part of you that will be just like twisted in anguish for hours. Well, that's sort of the tortured artist kind of stereotype, and there's a reason why it exists. I didn't put myself in that category until I did my masterclass. I did an online masterclass, and I covered topics like focus, hope, courage, faith, community, and over 6 weeks, over 12 hours of content. And I did it with a live audience, about 50 people. I capped it at 50 people. About 40 something joined me every single week, and someone who I've known previously, they bought the course, but I've known them previously, got in touch with me, and they said to me, I wouldn't want to have to live with your mind. And I had to say, what do you mean? I don't actually understand. I've only ever lived with one mind. I've only ever, right? Don't know how any different. And she kind of broke it down with me, and she said, it was after with the third week, which is about courage, and she said, have a look at the way you have broken down what courage is, why it exists, where it comes from. Why do some people have it and some people don't? Why do some people have it in one area but not another? Where does this come from? How do we cultivate it? How do we know in advance if the people around us have it? And I went through all of that in this session, this 2-hour-long session on courage, what it is, where it comes from. And you know, spoiler alert, I don't think it actually exists. It's something that exists only in action. Okay. Courageous action exists. Courage doesn't exist in the same way that love exists. Love is a feeling, and you can feel it whether you're in action or not. Courage is something that appears in the form of action. Okay. and we can. I won't redo the session, but when people get interviewed, having run into a burning building and saved a baby, the interviewer says, "Oh, that was so incredibly courageous," because what they saw was courage, and the person goes, "Oh, well, I just did what I felt like I had to do."
It's interesting you say that because I have found this a lot. I don't know if this is the same thing, but I think it's a good example. People will often speculate about how they'll react in a situation. Oh, I wouldn't do it that way. Oh, I would have done this. And then when they're in that, you watch it's fight or flight, but also you don't know, right? Like I've been first on scene at a horrific car accident. And I didn't want to be there and I didn't ask to be there. I just happened to be there.
These things by their nature, they happen to you.
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
you're there.
It's there.
And I was one of the first people available and I didn't know, I had no idea of how I'd react, but apparently I just go into like serious, like, all right, cool, you're doing this, you're going there, rah, 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 like doing all the things. And I don't know where that came from. That was just, my body was like, all right, we're going to do the thing. You know, and then afterwards you have that once the surge of adrenaline's got, and I'm like, oh my God, I just saw a dead body. What do I do? What do I do? But at the time, like my body just reacted. Now, there's been other instances where I thought I'd be tough and I was not. So it's you don't know.
So it's an interesting one. And courage, I contend that courage actually comes from your values. Your values being defined by the thing that you're willing to pay a price for. That's why we use the word value. They're the thing that we place value on. And how do we know there's value on them? We're willing to pay a price for them. So so courage appears in the form of action when you see your values being violated and you have an identity that requires you to do something about it. So values plus identity can equal courage under the right circumstances. But that's why people can have courage in one area and not in another. They can be incredible in one moment and go to jelly in another because those are different things which affect different parts of their identity and call upon different values.
And I think there's also irrational fear. You know, the reason I've never been to Topaz's studio is because he keeps talking about this pet huntsman. I will never come.
I don't have one right now.
That means it's hiding.
I think I've been blacklisted by the Borises.
So Topher has a Boris that takes many forms, which means there's multiple Borises.
I've had up to 9 Borises at once that I'm aware of.
I can't explain this to you, but my fear of spiders is so irrational. Just the thought of them makes the hackles on my neck stand up. My body just goes into shock.
They are very, very useful. They debug the studio.
Don't care.
They debug the studio and they are web experts.
Don't care.
So they are very, very useful. They're a valuable part of my team. But back to this thing. So I break down courage for 2 hours and I talk about it and I explore what it is and how do you then take conscious control over your values? How do you assess your own self-identity to determine whether it's in alignment with your values or whether you're lying to yourself? And this is why some people identify as courageous. They identify as the jock, but that's not truly their value. That's not truly actually what they're willing to pay a price for.
Typically, if you have to tell someone you are the thing,
correct,
you're not the thing.
The person saying, "Oh, well, I'm an alpha," is not the alpha.
Yeah, if you have to tell us that you're an alpha male,
then you're not. And so I broke that down for 2 hours, and this friend, got in touch with me and said, "I would not want to have to live with your mind, with your brain." And when she kind of explained it to me, I went, "I guess that is kind of a terrifying." Like we're getting right down to the nuts and bolts of your own psyche and who you are and what makes you tick and figuring out how to manually take control over that and become the person that you want to be. That's kind of a terrifying place. But for me, that's a natural extension of what I do. I want to know, how does politics work? How does economics work? How does my psyche work?
I just think it's also different. Like, the one thing I've always said to my students is just because you're weak in one area doesn't mean you're useless. It just means that's a redirection point. Yeah. And I think a lot of people approach things in their life. They go, I want to be a photographer, for example. And I don't say this to diminish anyone's hopes, but you either have it or you don't. And if I say you don't, it's not because I think you don't deserve it. It's just there's natural inclinations that you should possess that will make you a better person. If you are terribly introverted, it will be very difficult for you. Not impossible, just very difficult. And there's certain things like that. Like, for example, when it comes to mechanics or breaking things down, every time G explains something about space to me, I get what you're saying on a surface level, but my brain is like,
it doesn't quite compute.
Yeah. You know the monkey and the symbols? That's it.
Yeah, that's what
and
it's
it doesn't
doing.
matter how he tells it to me. I'm like, dude, I don't understand what gravitational apathy, blah, blah, blah. I don't get it. I do, but I don't.
And that's fair because you can then pick up a camera, grab the lens, and you understand the difference between your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO and your, you know.
Well, speaking of which, I made a video last week for YouTube because G was like, you need to do some evergreen content that people can always refer to. And you would know this. When you're like master at something or an expert at something, it becomes so intuitive you don't really know what you're doing.
Sure.
And I have been asked 1,000 times to teach people Photoshop. And I'm so adept at it. I don't think I could. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're not conscious of what you're doing.
Yeah,
you're just doing.
I don't think I can actually teach you because I don't know what buttons I'm pressing. I'm just I'm doing. I've been in it too long. But G was like, oh yeah, let's break down photography for people who want to get into it. And I struggle with this. And I was like, I just came up with this weird analogy. It was like a cow. So a cow and a paddock, right? So what is aperture? Go watch the video if you're interested in learning how to get onto manual mode.
Carlz J. Soda on YouTube talking about cows and photography.
It was interesting. It made sense. Like I was talking about depth of field.
I'll take your word for it.
But speaking of which, AI was amazing with this because I had this analogy and I was like, I haven't actually shot this scene before. I was like, AI, help me make this scene. Anyway, go watch the video. But basically what I had to do was reverse engineer the knowledge that I had. And then I played it and I said to G, if you don't get this, I've done a terrible job because he's not creative brained like me.
Sure.
He's very mechanical. And so he sat there and he watched it. He's like, I get it. It's complicated, but I get it. And I was like, oh, because it can be hard, but it's just everyone's different. But how did we get on this topic?
I was just going to say, Carly, we probably need to start getting back to the actual topics that you've got because we are 40 minutes in. And
it's a good conversation about AI.
We're having great fun, but can you do me a favor and take your phone off this very buzzy table? Because every time you get a notification, and you are far too popular for your own good, I'm hearing these notifications going all the way through the table, vibrating into the microphone and then coming through my ears. And I'm sure everybody else is hearing it as well. Brr, brr.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're too popular, Carly.
I'm just too important.
Go and have less friends.
Do you know what it is? It's my X video that went mega viral last week.
Very nice.
So I did a video.
Sorry, mega viral. I'm assuming you're referring to being retweeted by Elon Musk.
No, sadly.
Or has that
I'm waiting for
has
that
that only
moment.
happened to me?
Has only happened to me.
Twice.
40 million views, mate.
Twice.
Top me. 40 million.
Well, my 2 tweets definitely got that.
Me. It's always pissing contest with you. No. It's not nowhere near that viral, but I was talking about the topic we're about to get into, which I've been putting off because I hate talking about this man. But it was about Daniel Andrews and what happened last week in the news. And it was interesting because I said to G, I'm going to approach this video a little differently. Normally I'm just ranty and I'm like, meh. I was like, no, I'm just going to say factual statements and then cut it all together, smash cut it together. And that's all I did. And if you've ever seen one of my viral videos, I normally get like more, a
little bit more fired up.
Yeah, the spicy Carlz, I call it. I was like, no, I'm not going to be spicy. I'm just going to be like, we knew.
Yep.
We told you.
Yep.
Here's the evidence.
Told you so.
Blah. And it was interesting because it went viral. And normally when I go viral as a ranty, spicy Carlz, I get a lot of hate. And me. Fine. This one went viral and I only had 2 haters on it, which was interesting because we'll go into those people in a second. And that viral thing, it was so interesting because I attacked Aussies in it. I was just like, my frustration isn't that we were right. It's that Australians are so not considered. Oh, sorry, what's the word I'm trying to say? So not concerned that their human rights were breached.
Yeah.
They'll go get up in arms about Gaza or get up in arms about any other human rights issue across the world. But when it comes to their own human rights, they don't care.
Couldn't care less.
They couldn't be more apathetic.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because a lot of people writing comments going, this shocks me about Aussies too. And so, I thought that was good. But let's get to the haters because I told them I'd give them a shout out.
Yes, please.
So there's 2.
We love haters.
2 accounts. And again, like we just said, if you say you're the thing, probably not the thing.
Yeah.
So if your account's called Awake Australia or
unlikely.
You're probably not awake.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Rise Melbourne, shout out. I don't know what old mate's name is, but Rise Melbourne has been a troll of ours for a while because I'm not sure if you've interacted with him, but he was also the one that accused us of being ASIO agents when we were at ARC in London.
Yeah, I still haven't got that paycheck from the government.
Dude, I'm
still waiting.
Still waiting.
Yeah.
So and also I'm so flattered that people think I am so adept to be this good at everything all at once.
So have you ever heard that expression, that person is so open-minded their brains fell out?
Yeah.
Right? These people are they're looking for conspiracies so deeply that they end up just with a face full of dirt and they can't see.
Well, this guy, since COVID, I do think he was part of the protest. He did help organise protests.
Credit to him,
which is great, cool, whatever.
Yep.
But he's gone too far. He's black-pilled himself and he's also run out of oxygen down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But he's nasty, right? So anyway, he's trolled me a couple of times. He trolled us heaps in ARC. So you, Rukshan, me and Rebecca, who apparently he was quite friendly with, were all working for ASIO, which is Okay, cool.
Okay, Rise Melbourne, can you just get in touch with ASIO and just remind them that they still haven't posted
Well, just tell me who it is I'm working for, dude, because like I've got some bones to pick with them.
Who's my handler? Like, just introduce me to them. That'd be great.
I haven't seen my super go up, so so that was that. And then we're all grifters, of course. You know, that's an easy one.
Sorry, I haven't actually. I love this T-shirt. This is aimed at my American followers. Too much 1984, not enough 1776. You can buy one from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Sorry, what was that about grifting? I'm not a grifter.
Grifty.
Yeah.
And now this week or last week, we are now Mossad agents.
Are we?
You know,
Gosh, it's hard to keep up with my career these days.
We are that talented. We can be all things at once, all whilst moonlighting as a professional photographer and a political commentator. Like we just have apparently abundant free time.
Well, this is the thing. We are just exceptional human beings. That's what he's saying.
He's very complimentary to us.
Here's me thinking that I'm just an ordinary person, but clearly I mustn't be.
But you know, my favorite thing about trolls is like, you know, I don't know if they have much else to do because they're sitting there trolling. And I might see something and be like, oh, yeah, whatever. And I'm like making a cup of tea or walking the dogs or maybe rolling around the sheets with my partner. Who knows? And because I haven't jumped onto their comment the minute they sent it, then they send more and more and more.
And I love the one of, no reply, blah, 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 blah. You're like, too afraid. I'm like, no, just keep feeding the algorithm, mate.
I'm
you
like,
just keep
no
going.
reply, bro. I don't open my app every 2 minutes like you do.
Yeah.
But then he called me piggy and he's like, oh, you've put on 30 kilos. I was like, thanks. I'm like, you are really scraping the bottom of that barrel, dude.
Piece of advice, Mr. Rise Melbourne, if you want to try and insult a woman's weight, the thing that you say needs to be believable.
Yeah.
Right? 30 kilos.
I need to be fat.
A woman knows if she's put on 30 kilos, okay? If you want to really get under their skin, you go, oh, you look like you put on 2 kilos. Because that's actually believable, right? And that's a nasty thing to do in any case. Like, why would you even bother? Like, it says a lot about you. But honestly, if you're going to try and troll people, there has to be the kernel of truth in it. That's the only way that insults and trolls ever work. And I can't believe I have to sit here and educate you on how to be a fucking troll. Yeah. Do better.
It's so true. The only comments that hurt are the ones that have an element of truth.
They have to have a kernel of truth. Like, they're the ones that make you go, oh, I need to respond to that. The ones that are just completely ridiculous, they don't even bounce off. They don't even hit in order to bounce off.
If he had said I had a face like a bowl of busted up Smarties, I would have been like, fair.
Well, it was busted up in an earthquake. And
it's been rebuilt with titanium. There's some accuracy to that, you know. But yeah, I just thought it was funny. But that was the only troll. I didn't get any troll from lefties, which is interesting because, again, I wasn't ranty. I was just pointing out what happened with Daniel Andrews. So, with that all being said, let's get into our headline. I said to Topher before he jumped on, I am so done talking about Daniel Andrews, but I know it's important. So we're obviously talking about the curfew scandal. Bring us up to speed.
All right, so we already knew that Daniel Andrews lied about the reason for the curfews. I covered this in my documentary, Battleground Melbourne. You can watch it for free at battlegroundmelbourne.com. I'm such a good grifter that I give away my stuff for free. So we knew even back then, 3 years ago when I made that documentary, that Daniel Andrews lied about being asked by the police. He said the police said, hey, these rules are hard to enforce. Give us a curfew so it's nice and clean and easy. After 8 p.m. we can enforce these rules. Then I think it was 2GB, but it was a radio host asked the police minister, hey, did you ask for the curfews? And the flat out answer was no. So Daniel Andrews then gets challenged. You lied. You said it was the police that wanted this. And he pivots. Instead of saying, actually, it was my own thought bubble. I just thought it would be a good idea. I'm playing God. I'm enjoying having this much power over everyone's lives. He said, oh, actually, it was the health advice. And of course, the health advice was secret all the way through. We never saw it. This is one of the really things that should piss everybody off, is that essentially it was treated like the health advice was a holy text, that we weren't qualified. We didn't have the relationship with God that would allow us to interpret this information. We had to rely on the high priest, and the high priest was Brett Sutton and Daniel Andrews. And so Daniel Andrews says, oh, it was the health advice. And of course, we never saw it. So then it took a Freedom of Information request, which the Victorian government spent 4.5 years fighting, spending Victorian taxpayers' money trying to not release this information. They lost that court case, and in the documents released was an email from Brett Sutton to somebody else where they stated point blank that the curfew did not come from health advice.
So the thing that I said in my video, which I'm going to reiterate now, is that people on the left, and I hate talking about left and right, but there is the COVID...
It's a useful shorthand.
The COVID zealots and those of us who...
With brains.
With brains. What left and right is the easiest way to say it. Okay, so what scares me more, right, is that these left-leaning people, the progressives, the people who fell hook, line and sinker for COVID,
Sure.
they will get up in arms about Gaza. They'll talk about the human rights breaches in El Salvador. They'll be outraged at any executive order from Donald Trump. But now you have unequivocal fact that Daniel Andrews made decries in political, what do you call it?
Decrees?
Decrees.
Right.
In politically enforcing curfews that breached human rights, locked people up in residential towers, breaching human rights.
According to the Ombudsman Deborah Glass specifically. So that's not our opinion. That's
And then the Human Rights Commission of
Australian
Australia
Human
has
Rights
also
Commission,
come out confirming this was a breach of human rights. And they're silent. This is insane to me. You are so concerned with human rights on the other side of the planet that when your own are breached, you are just apathetic about it.
But the fact that they're silent speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Because where is Dan Fangirl? Where's
PR guy?
Where's PR guy? Where are these people now? They have all lost interest and walked away. And I guarantee you, if they thought they were on the up and up and Daniel Andrews was being vindicated, they'd be rubbing our noses in it. The fact that they've gone silent speaks volumes.
It also just shows you that you can be a level of sycophant that is just, it's unconscionable to most people. Like, okay, cool, you're obsessed with One Direction, Hanson, whatever, but Daniel Andrews, have you got no life?
All right, so we don't want to spend too long on this, but I want to make this one point. People keep saying to me, it's ancient history. What's the point? Even people that oppose Daniel Andrews are like, what's the point? He's never going to get held accountable, blah, blah, blah. Well, sure, if we let it go, if we take that attitude, then you're absolutely right. He will never be held accountable. But he's currently being protected by his friends in high places. The police commissioner was appointed by him, or not anymore, but all the way through, and they're still his friends. WorkSafe investigated him twice, but he's the one who appointed the head of WorkSafe, and he appointed the head of the board of WorkSafe, etc. So he's got all the friends in high places, all the people in the right places to protect him. But over time, people retire, people move on, they get out of those positions, and a new generation comes in that didn't rise into those positions under the thumb of Daniel Andrews. They don't have that loyalty. Daniel Andrews doesn't have a dirt file on them. Whatever the leverage is doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That takes time.
Yes.
Now, Daniel Andrews isn't dead yet, which means we still have time. I want to see him behind bars. Whether I'll get to that or not, I don't know. But I want to see that happen. And the only way we ever have a chance of that happening is if we do, to some degree, without letting it destroy our lives or take over our lives, we, to some degree, have to maintain the rage. We have to continue to care, because if we stop caring, he does get away scot-free.
Well, and the other thing is too, like, at the risk of you wearing the wrong T-shirt for this statement, the reason history repeats itself is because we refuse to learn from it the first time.
Yeah.
And what is happening with a lot of these people, I think it's not necessarily that they supported Daniel Andrews. I think there's a lot of people who didn't, but it's just like, honestly, I have to get on with it.
It's fatigue. And we do have to get on with life. We cannot live in the past. We cannot sit there saying, let's hypothetically, well, I mean, not hypothetically. Okay, COVID cost me a business that I'd spent 6 years working on. And there was $5.5 million worth of investment, including a couple of $100,000 from my own family. There was a house deposit that we lost, that my family lost in that collapse. And it collapsed because of the lockdowns. It collapsed because of Daniel Andrews. All right. I could sit there for the rest of my life telling myself that my life would have been fine if it weren't for Daniel Andrews. Be that guy that sits in the gutter. I could have been a contender. Yeah. Right? I could be that guy.
Yeah.
Or I can go, okay, that sucks. That hurts like hell. It's, that's going to leave a mark. But I still have the rest of my life ahead of me, and I need to get on with things. So we do need to let go in the sense of actually just getting on with life and making the most of our new circumstances.
The other thing is too, that I think we've talked about this before, but it was an obedience test, like seeing how far they could get away with it. Maybe like not necessarily that was their intentions the whole time, but it did give the government a test of going, they're pretty compliant. It seems that Australians don't value freedom, So it means that next time things roll around, whatever that next time looks like, it might get to a point where your human rights are pushed to a point where you start to get up in arms. And guess what? Well, the first time you let them get away with it. The second time.
Right. It gets harder. It gets harder each time you go around that roundabout.
I mean, we've said this a billion times. I think we say this every podcast. We are slipping into that Venezuelan spiral. And I think it's the frustration I have is I think Australians will have to learn it the hard way. I do believe we're going to re-elect Anthony Albanese. And I think in probably 18 months' time, those chickens will come home to roost where people go, what the fuck is happening?
I don't think there's a big difference between Albo and Dutton. I was predicting a Dutton win until he went and backflipped on firing a bunch of public servants and making them actually show up to the office. That was the one policy that I thought could have actually fired up the Liberal base and might have actually carried him. As it is now, with him having backflipped and proven himself to have absolutely no spine, then I think you're right. I think Albo is going to win. But I don't think there's a big enough difference between them for us to say that one is the Venezuela spiral and the other one is not. They're just varying rates of descent.
Do you think Albanese is likely to go back on his word where he won't make a majority government with the Greens? A former coalition?
Albanese will do whatever he has to do in order to remain PM.
Did you watch the debate?
I am delighted to say that I spent my time on another podcast with a different Carlz. I've been cheating on you with a different Carlz podcast.
What the hell is this shit?
It was Tim and Carly, and they are defending access to national parks, or access to bushland for Australians. And they have a podcast that I think reaches like one of their mums and I think one of their dogs. And I chose to do that and chat to one of their dogs instead of watch the debate. That's how little value I put on the debate. And Tim and Carlz, I love you. I know you reach more than your mum and your dog.
They comment on our podcast every week. So
do they? Okay,
yes.
Well, there you go. You've got a shout out now.
Yeah. What's their podcast so people can go?
I would have said the name if I could remember. I was racking my brains as I was talking.
Tim and Carly, please comment below.
Yeah, please comment below the name of your podcast.
The interesting thing, I watched the last half and Gareth wanted to watch it and I was like, I cannot stomach this, but
it just makes me too angry.
They're just two wet blankets.
Yeah.
And I did find really interesting, right? And I look at this purely from an observation point. Dutton is quite bigger as a person. He's taller.
Yeah.
And Albanese, when he was at the podium, he looked small. He looked weak. Now, other Australians might not interpret it that way. That's the way I interpreted it. But he was fact-checked live, and then he was all stuttering mess when he had to defend. He's like, no, when you say that, no. And anyone who stutters and just tells me that they're not in control of their emotions. As a leader, you are trained politically to be able to go, okay, I heard the question. How am I going to spin it? And I hate giving Daniel Andrews a compliment.
Oh,
he was exceptional at it.
Fabulous, yeah.
He would hear the comment and go, I hear what you're saying, but this is the thing. And then he'd just sit there and twist it. And you're like, God, you're good. But there was a lot of that. But there was a few one-liners from Dutton that I was like, I think he has it in him. But whoever is advising the Liberal Party is, I swear to God, they're a plant. They're a Labor plant.
I'm becoming increasingly convinced. I've just realised my cable's not clipped in. Carly, can't you just maintain your own jolly... Wow, Carly.
It's always my fault.
Always. I wouldn't blame women if it wasn't always their fault. That's going to come back to haunt me. No, you're absolutely right. I am genuinely now convinced. I wasn't convinced before this campaign, but with watching how this campaign has gone, I am quite sure that there is one of the consultancies or advisories that the Liberal Party have engaged, probably have a long-term relationship with. Someone has infiltrated that organisation and is in a position of trust and is giving them terrible advice.
This brings me to my first tangent of the podcast.
Ooh, tangent time.
So last week, literally as you left my house, I got a door knock and I assumed it was you just saying, oh, I forgot something. And so I open it all friendly and there is no one there other than Mark Dufresne, whatever his name
Mark
is.
Doofus. Yeah, that'll do. Doofus, yeah.
He's the local MP for my area. And
just the person you wanted to have a chat with.
And I was like, after I've just done a political podcast, you knock on my door of all the doors to knock on. And he's all smiley. Hello, I'm your local member and I'm here to give you my how to vote card.
Please tell me you made him regret being born.
Oh, dude, I've never seen someone squirm so much. And then it became increasingly obvious as time went on that he realized he was also on camera because we have the security cameras.
Yeah.
And you watched, is his body language changed and shifted because he knew he was being recorded? So I took the bait. I was like, all right, let's have a chat.
Oh, yeah.
And if you guys have ever been on the receiving end of my sharp tongue, it's not a nice place to be.
When do we get the video? When does the video drop?
I thought about it and I was like, this has potential to go mega viral and I just don't know if I want that heat because
You were fired up?
A little bit.
Yeah.
You could say a little bit C-U-N-T-Y-E.
You were spicy? Spicy Carlz?
I was spicy. I didn't yell because this is the thing. You don't win an argument by raising your voice. I just talk very slow and stare right into your soul to a point where it's...
I'm glad that you've now told me what I need to look out for. Yes.
Yeah, never. I don't yell. When I go quiet...
When Carly slows down her rate of speech, that's when I put the stab-proof vest on.
Fucking run.
Yeah.
So he was like, oh, and I said to him, I'm going to be really honest with you from the get-go. You have not got my vote and you will never have my vote. He's like, oh, okay, can I ask why? And I think he assumed young woman must be voting for the Greens. He's like, we are doing a lot of things for the climate. I was like, the climate? Couldn't give a shit about the climate, mate. I give a shit as a small business owner in this country who's been taxed out of their eyeballs. And after 2 years of lockdown where I lost a significant amount of money and you guys are still yet to come out and say, hey, we did it wrong. I know that Labor weren't in charge, but stick with me.
Well, yeah.
I want to know what you guys are doing for the middle class who are funding all of these free projects. And then he went on and goes, oh, well, we need free access to education. I was like, that is paid for by the taxpayers and usually the people who are working class who are then giving people the academic grift. Sure.
The people who can't afford to spend 4 years, because remember, time is also money. The people who can't afford to spend 4 years at university because they're busy working are funding the people privileged enough to be able to take 4 years out.
Correct.
To
Who become lifetime academics and then get indoctrinated to all this like socialist nonsense. And then he went on and said something about, oh, well, you're being very irrational. I said, I'm being irrational. And can you imagine? Can you imagine saying that to my face? In my home?
Carly, you can't tease me like this. You can't like, come on. You've got to post the video.
Imagine the cracks of the earth opening up and just steam and lava flowing and venom coming out of my mouth. That's basically what happened, but in the most calm, sadistic, psychopathic way. I was like, did you just call me irrational as a white, older male? You just said to a young female, she is irrational because I am expressing my direct concerns.
Please tell me that the next words out of his mouth were, calm down.
Pretty much. He's like, I think you need to calm down.
Oh, no.
I think you need to calm down. You're being incredibly irrational. Now, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't swear at him. I was talking to him incredibly calmly.
Carly, this is so unfair. Just post the video already.
I'd ruin his career. It would take him, and maybe I should bloody post it.
It's a week before the election.
I just sat there and I was like, no, I'm not gonna make this easy for you. And I was like, so interestingly, I've told you my direct concerns that impact me as a small business owner, as a woman, as a millennial. And you've turned around and told me that those concerns are irrational because I disagree with you politically. Am I understanding this correctly? And you could see him just going, what the fuck? I need to get out of here. What do I do? Oh my God, how blah, blah, blah. And then he started backpedaling. And I was like, okay, well, just letting you know, Mark, that now you are on my camera saying that I'm irrational because I disagree with you. That's going to do wonders for your campaign. And at this point, he was just like, oh, fuck.
He has probably laid awake for like 3 nights after that encounter, waiting for it to drop, and he's probably started to forget about it now in the busyness of the campaign. Yeah. But I think maybe you should remind him that it exists by having it show up on the internet.
Too easy.
I mean, but you want to build your YouTube channel, right? You put that on your YouTube channel.
I just don't want the press to be at my house again. That's the problem. And also on the video, you can tell exactly where I live, which is
not ideal. So. You know that song that Eminem does, I wanted to be on the cover of Newsweek, but not be interrupted when I'm out shopping, excuse me, blah, blah, blah. Like, obviously, I can't do Eminem lyrics. That's what you're talking about here. Yeah. You're like, I want to have a public profile, but I don't want the heat that comes with it. Well, sorry, pick one.
It's just one of those things. I was like, to be fair, I was pretty like...
You were fired up.
I was fired up, and I was like, I don't need people to see that. But it was just interesting because... You've come and knocked on my door thinking I'd be an easy vote. I'm a woman and you assumed I cared about the climate and I cared about fucking Gaza or whatever the hell else you assumed that young women care about. When I came back to you as a business owner and someone in the middle class who's feeling the pinch, you told me I was irrational. I didn't talk about anything like hypersensitive. I didn't talk about anything to do with COVID. I just was like, this is incorrect. And what you're saying is like, every time you tell me it's free, I know I'm paying for it indirectly in a different capacity.
Yeah.
And that just tells me that as a taxpayer, I'm going to be struggling even more because now we're funding even more things.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a perfect summary of the Labor Party. If you disagree, you're irrational.
Well, I don't disagree.
Anyway, that was
I
won't
won't disagree with you because apparently it'll get me a proper dressing down. Apparently I've gotten off lightly every time I've ever argued with you in the past.
Nah. There's not often I get fired up, but if you tell me, if I'm acting perfectly calm and just talking to you and you tell me I'm irrational, I just can't stomach that.
Calm down. All right, just calm down.
Fuck you. Do you know what I find interesting, right? I'm not progressive in the slightest. I'm nowhere near a feminist. But there are genuine moments of sexism.
Oh, yeah.
And that was one of them.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, mate.
Yeah.
You're telling me a woman I'm irrational just because Anyway, enough.
Can you imagine a woman being so uppity that she has a podcast where she tells you what she thinks about the world? Like, get in your lane.
Yeah, get back in the kitchen,
Yeah,
Carly.
that's
Jesus.
right. Go and make me some sourdough.
I haven't made any for ages.
See, your slipping skills are slipping.
That's why I put the 30 kilos on.
Ah, yeah.
It's all sourdough.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
All right, so one more about Daniel Andrews because we talked about having him accountable. Let's talk about Bike Boy very quickly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, yeah.
So
that is interesting, actually.
Ryan settled out of court, which we assumed would happen because...
Okay, hang on. Sorry, because I've heard different things and I haven't done a video on this. I haven't looked into it. Wasn't his settlement actually with Slater and Gordon for their failure? So he hasn't settled with Daniel Andrews.
No. So, and we saw this happening, right? So I've been following this closely and friends of mine are heavily involved in this. Slater and Gordon are the people who somehow indirectly became in charge of his settlement claim with TAC. And he settled for $80,000 with the TAC because he was seriously harmed.
Yeah, he got
right.
80,000 actually doesn't seem like a lot.
No, that's the problem. Like he's had considerable injuries and obviously like trauma beyond it. Like what happened to him, it almost killed him.
Yeah,
that's how serious it was.
Yeah.
And typically when you're a victim of a road accident, the TAC covers not only medical bills, but helps you get on track and you have some OT and all sorts of things. And, and particularly if it's impinging your life to a point where you can't work and it's affecting your income, the TAC is there for those reasons. And
and we all pay for those premiums through our car registration.
Correct.
So that is an insurance scheme that is paid for by motorists to help the victims of car crashes and things like that.
But when you think about it, right, 80 grand, he was a young boy when it happened. I think he was like 13,
He was 15.
15,
yeah.
80 grand just doesn't seem like enough.
Not for that amount of injury and the amount of time he spent in hospital. But Slater and Gordon historically have very deep ties with the Labor Party.
Correct. And so it was interesting because Ryan's family don't particularly, I can't pinpoint to the moment where Slater and Gordon were engaged to act on their behalf.
They just
appeared. And there's obviously, like, if you guys haven't been following this, there's a lot of things that didn't go according to the book. So the police never breath tested. It wasn't documented correctly. Daniel Andrews was able to drive the devastated car from the scene, which had a smashed windshield.
Which would have most certainly not been a roadworthy
Correct.
vehicle.
And the police were on site when he decided to drive. Like lots of things, right? There was 2 calls to 911. I keep saying 911.
What's the number for 911?
The 2 calls to 000, both from a female and Daniel Andrews himself. The female is obviously Kath. And apparently they're at different directions on the same street making the same phone call, but Daniel Andrews wasn't there. He was somewhere. Anyway, lots of things that were sus. But the reason Ryan went Slater and Gordon is because it would mean he would have access to Daniel Andrews' phone records. And access to documents. Now, them settling out of court means those aren't then put into public record.
Right.
So the settlement is obviously a way for Daniel Andrews to omit, like getting subpoenaed for evidence. But this settlement, who knows what the figure is? Let's assume it's a juicy figure because it would need to be. That figure, I assume, and this is purely speculative. I don't understand, but this is what I think is happening. That was intentional because Ryan has been doing a GoFundMe to help him fund his thing. By settling out of court with Slater and Gordon, that has given him both financial means but also reasonable doubt to then go after Daniel Andrews for defamation because Daniel Andrews has said that Ryan made it up and all this sort of stuff, right?
Ryan was the one he went flying across
the street.
He flew over,
blah, 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 and all the evidence points to very much other. I don't know this for fact, but I would want to see Sue Chrysanthemou, the senior counsel that Moira Deeming had, and also she represented Brittany Higgins in the defamation trial with Bruce Lehman. I think she should be hired, but I don't know if they will. I dare say she's expensive. They're going to go after Daniel Andrews for defamation. Now, the interesting thing about defamation is it's very hard.
Sorry, are you saying they are going to go after Daniel? Okay,
yeah,
I
it's happening.
Heard that.
Yes, so it's definitely happening. He is Ryan Mullen is suing Daniel Andrews for defamation.
Yeah,
that is, and which is done civilly.
It is civil, but he will have to prove that what Daniel Andrews said was not factually correct. So that is going to involve a lot of the actual facts of the day.
Well, and this is what's interesting. The defamation thing, we just saw this with Moira Deeming and John Prosciutto. Defamation is hard to prove, But you also have to argue it to a point where there's like reasonable doubt that you weren't that weren't defamed, or you were defamed. So both parties are going to have to really, really argue this point, particularly if it gets to a point where it's already public.
Yeah.
And defamation trials are public.
Yeah.
So
and the defamation in this case is you defamed me by saying that I did things that I didn't do. So it is going to hinge around the facts of what
prove
actually
that I
happened
either
on
did
the
the thing
night.
that you said.
Correct.
And I'm going to prove that it didn't happen. So it's very interesting. And the reason this matters for, everyone's like, oh, this is Ryan's problem. No. This is how Daniel Andrews gets held accountable. Everyone should be excited by this because he's going to have to be caught. He's tied up in court.
Yep.
This is going to go on for a good 12 months, maybe more. And there is going to be a lot of things that are subpoenaed that have to be put on the public record that we then get to scrutinize. And imagine this for just 1 minute. Let's say Daniel Andrews was driving the car. How do we prove that? I don't know, but there is reasonable doubt to assume that the case as outlined did not happen the way it did.
Yeah.
It is evident that Daniel Andrews was probably drunk or above the legal limit and drove into Ryan. That
is my interpretation and my opinion.
Right. That becomes very subjective or speculative. But let's say that's becomes a point where it's like, hang on a minute, there is credible reason to believe this is actually what happened. So then it's like, okay, well, who covered for him, and why was this not like So this was 13 years ago. If that starts to bring the Premier into question from, there will be claims then of corruption.
Correct.
Okay, corruption stemming back to 13 years ago. What else is he corrupt about?
Correct.
Boom, boom, boom. Guys, dominoes.
And also the process is the punishment. And I know this well because Daniel Andrews pursued me for 2.5 years with criminal charges because of my activities during COVID and me standing up for human rights. And I say Daniel Andrews pursued me. Get this for a chain of events. I was arrested 1 week after I announced that I was going to make the documentary Battleground Melbourne. Watch it for free at battlegroundmelbourne.com. And that's pure coincidence, of course. Arrested a week later. That may actually be a coincidence because the police had been gathering a brief of evidence on me for quite some time. So maybe the timing of the arrest was influenced by that, but they were always planning on coming and getting me at some point in time.
So much so that we had a plan for Topaz arrest.
Yeah, correct. There was a multi-page plan,
we knew it was happening.
actions on in the event of my arrest. And actually, in the end, Victoria Police are the reason why I raised the budget for the documentary because the amount of publicity I got as a result of being arrested then caused the
worked perfectly.
It was actually like if I was a Mossad agent, that's exactly what I would do, or ASIO agent, that's exactly what I would do. But then they pursued me with criminal charges for 2.5 years. They dropped the charges against Monica. They dropped the charges against a bunch of other people. These are the criminal charges. They refused. My lawyer was also representing Monica, and my lawyer got Monica's charges dropped. And then she went to them and said, well, how about you drop Topaz as well? They said, no, we're not going to do that. Why not? We don't have to tell you. Then Daniel Andrews resigned. At the very next court appearance after Daniel Andrews' resignation, the police withdrew the charges. Right? So I have reason to believe that Daniel Andrews was personally aware of the charges against me and that his presence as the Premier of Victoria at least had somewhat of an influence on the police's decisions around whether to continue pursuing those charges or not.
Well, I have it on a good authority that Daniel Andrews' personal cabinet were the ones that engineered the hit piece on me.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of,
Yep, wouldn't surprise me at all. And so having lived for 2.5 years under the shadow of criminal charges, I would like, if I don't get to see Daniel Andrews behind bars, which I still believe we can see that happen, but I would at least like for him to live the entire rest of his life every single day under legal threat, having to fight in a court of law, having to spend the money, having to sit down with lawyers and talk about it and strategize and try and figure out how he's going to weasel out of it this time. He's going to
go mad. We've just seen this with John Prosciutto, right? Is it prosciutto or that's ham?
Prosciutto is very tasty. Yeah. John is not tasty.
Prosciutto.
It's pesuto.
Pesuto, whatever. I'm calling it prosciutto. Sounds better. Change your name. So we just saw that with John Prosciutto. Sorry. John Ham.
No, that's an actor. Don't insult him.
Okay, so we've just seen this, right? He doubled down. So he was the leader of the Liberal Party. He accused Maura Deeming of being a neo-Nazi sympathiser or, holding court with them at that protest. Yeah. And there was unequivocal evidence that did not happen and he was wrong. But rather than going, okay, I called it wrong, he wanted to save face. So he doubled down.
I disagree with the motive. He wanted to neutralise a threat. Nothing terrifies an empty, spineless person like John Pizzuto more than having members in his party that actually have principles.
I don't think he's that smart.
No, I think he knows a threat when he sees one.
Do you?
Yeah, I think he saw his opportunity to actually just destroy Moira and get her out of his party so that she would never be the one that took over from him.
You're far too... you give these people far too much credit. I don't know if they're that smart, but yeah, maybe.
The reason you don't become the premier unless you have a very analytical, vicious political mind.
Yeah.
Look at Daniel Andrews.
Yeah.
Okay. He was an absolute nonce in all kinds of ways, but the man was politically brilliant.
Yeah.
John Pizzuto is an absolute empty suit. He is a spineless, valueless man, in my opinion. But he understands politics and he recognizes a threat when he sees one.
Well, they rule with fear. That's how they get it. So, yeah, but regardless, John doubled down and he went on the record and made all these press releases saying that Moira was a Nazi sympathiser and I think he called her a Nazi. And
that is my recollection as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, she won. So she won for it was proved in court that he defamed her.
Yeah.
And he's now up not only for the legal costs, but also $1 million in damages.
And
it's going to send him bankrupt.
Potentially bankruptcy.
Which is, I mean, this is, like, if that's not a lesson to Daniel Andrews, this is exactly what's going to happen with Ryan. They are going to tie you up in court. You are going to be punished just by the public trial of, this happened. Everything's going to be like looked at with a microscope.
The process is the punishment.
Correct.
And that gets used against us all the time. But also it's an opportunity for us when we choose to use it. And I'm actually pleased.
So
that
you should
Ryan's
be elated. And you
100%.
should be following this closely. Like, it's Ryan's story, yes. But by and large, Victorian population's going to get their revenge.
Yeah.
And this is what I said, but I think I said this about Harvey Weinstein ages ago. Often the true victim doesn't see a direct criminal charge for what happened to them.
Yeah.
But because that person is habitual in their criminal activity, eventually the snowball catches them and someone somewhere, and they might get like charged on something smaller in comparison to what happened to you. But this is what I mean about karma. You can't expect it to come back directly from the person that you offend.
Well, this is the thing. Al Capone, they got him on tax evasion.
Correct.
He didn't get done for the murders, the hits that he authorized, or for the drug trafficking that he was involved in, or the other organized crime stuff. He got done for tax evasion, but they still got him and put him behind bars.
And this is true for most big prolific criminals. They get you through like a slip up somewhere, and that's how they get the charge.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. This should buoy people with Daniel Andrews.
Yeah,
Is he going to be like, everyone keeps talking about Nuremberg 2.0. That's never going to happen, guys.
Unfortunately, that's probably correct. Yes.
I get that you want it, but have a look at the Karma Bus is coming, just in a different capacity. So anyway, I can't talk about him anymore.
Yes,
all right.
thank you.
This is something that I saw. I don't know if you have insight onto this, but we're in the middle of a federal election. Sorry to all our American followers. We'll talk about Trump at the end, I promise. But Trumpet of Patriots. Have you seen this scandal this week?
This was a train wreck. But can I just say, this is essentially just the train finally running out of track and collapsing. It was always going to be a train wreck.
God, it just bothers me.
Can I preface everything? Because I'm about to say some really mean things about people that I really genuinely actually have respect for. Clive Palmer, who is the money and the man behind the United Australia Party, which has an elected federal senator right now in Senator Ruff Babette, and is also the man behind the Trumpet of Patriots, and we can touch on very quickly why. He's got two parties going on. He spent his own money to bring a vast quantity of hydroxychloroquine into Australia because he understood and read the research that showed that it was effective at reducing the mortality rate of COVID-19. And I can say that now and not get censored because it's actually finally been admitted that this is true. It's not a panacea. It doesn't save every life, but it reduces the mortality rate. And he stepped up at a time when the Australian government was not, and he spent his own money and he got that stuff shipped here. The Australian government seized it off him and destroyed it and then badmouthed him and were just absolutely shameful. And so I will always honour and respect Clive Palmer for the fact that he was willing to put his money where his mouth was at a time when there was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't know how bad COVID was going to be. And he said, I'm going to try and make it better. Yeah. I'm going to try and make it less bad. He always deserves our respect for that. The man is also a buffoon.
Correct.
He is politically clueless, has no understanding that his face and his brand is hurting his party rather than helping it.
Correct.
And that he has become a wrecking ball. This Trumpet of Patriots thing has become an absolute wrecking ball through this election. It is embarrassing his entire side of politics. and the Australian people would have been genuinely better off if he had simply stayed out of it.
I agree. From a pure marketing point of view, everything about that has been a train wreck. The UAP was a little bit better, but it was still a train wreck.
The UAP became good when it was no longer Clive Palmer's United Australia Party or the Palmer United Party, because initially I can remember the first billboard that I saw of his was Clive Palmer's big face, and I say big because it was big on the billboard, but also because it's big. Big yellow background, black writing, and Clive Palmer's face. And I just looked at it, and I'm in downtown Melbourne.
Yeah.
Like, on what planet, which marketing guru came up with that as a strategy? I guarantee you it was Clive Palmer came up with that and said, I'll just put my face up on a big billboard.
Oh, I mean, I've talked about this on earlier podcasts. The photo with him and Tucker Carlson plastered on billboards everywhere. It's embarrassing. No one's giving him advice, because I dare say as a billionaire he won't take advice.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right.
But, this is the thing. I don't live in an echo chamber. I'm going to critique people on my side.
Correct.
And everything I have seen that has come out of Trumpeter Patriots is embarrassing. It's so unserious that I look at this as a vanity project.
All right. For those that don't know, so the United Australia Party is actually historically one of the more successful Australian political parties. If you go back to Menzies and the formation of the Liberal Party, and in fact, you could argue that Menzies didn't create the Liberal Party, he rebranded the UAP. The UAP was falling apart for various reasons. Menzies came in, brought a bunch of the people across and reunited them under a new vision and a new banner. But essentially, he kind of inherited that party.
Yeah.
So then the Palmer United Party comes along. They become the United Australia Party, sort of picking up that history. There have been prime ministers under the UAP brand prior to the Liberal Party. Clive Palmer spends a fortune on election after election. This was, of course, he used to be a donor to the Liberal Party, and then he recognised that they were losing their way. And again, good on him, because he's right about that. And he spent his own money, and a vast amount of it, trying to build an alternative party. His only success so far, apart from a couple of other, sort of here and there at a state level, has been a federal senator in Ralph Babette, and Ralph's been fantastic. He speaks out, he speaks his mind, he says stuff that's not being said by the Liberal or Labor or Greens or National parties. So good on them. But he has spent an absolute fortune building up the UAP brand to the point that they got enough votes to be able to get a senator in Victoria. But he hates doing paperwork, and he doesn't seem to have good people around him. And I don't know why that is, but he doesn't seem to have the right people around him. And so he didn't want to do the paperwork to maintain the registration of the United Australia Party in between elections. So he told the Australian Electoral Commission that he was deregistering it so that he could reduce the paperwork burden of having a registered party. The problem is, under Australian electoral rules, you cannot re-register a party under a previous name to run in the next election. Now, this is designed to stop people from saying, oh, the UAP have been unregistered, I'll call myself the UAP, and deceive voters into thinking that, right? But the rule is the rule. It doesn't matter that it's the same people trying to re-register it. You can't re-register it.
Yeah.
And so Palmer tried to sue them and say, I should be allowed to run under this party name. He lost that court case, and on the strict interpretation of the letter of the law, that was the correct decision. Yeah. He had no right to use that name. And so instead of going, okay, I stuffed up, lesson learned, I need to get better people around me and I'm going to sit this election out, he then went and grabbed Trumpeter Patriots. Now, this was a pre-existing party. He didn't form the party. It was a pre-existing party. I think it's been around for about 6 years, but don't quote me on that. And he's come in, taken it over. I don't know what the arrangement is, but he's basically come in and taken it over, and he's running that as a parallel party. They come out with their how to vote cards, and this is the scandal that we're talking about today. They come out with their how to vote cards, and immediately people had questions. I don't know if you want to go through some of that.
Yeah, I've got the talking points just so we get it right. So in Sydney, they had a vote card preference Labor over the freedom-friendly minor parties. Everyone is up in arms, and this is over a few seats. So it's Flinders, Monash, Wannon. They've also recommended preference in climate 200 backed independents, so progressive candidates, so the Teals. And this contradicted Clive Palmer's early promise to preference incumbent Labor and Liberal MPs last to end the two-party duopoly. And that's something they've campaigned on. So there's been internal backlash. So Jason Smart, who's a Trumpeter Patriots candidate in Flinders, has publicly condemned the decision, urging voters to put him last in protest. He stated the only reason he agreed to run after assurances that Labor, Greens and Teal candidates would be placed last. And so this is where things get really icky. Now, I've seen conflicting reports on this. Apparently, Senator Babette came out and going, this is all strategic. We had this planned. We're trying to marginalise these seats so that they're in contention, whatnot. And then obviously the pressure got too much and Clive's then feeling embarrassed. So Clive has come out and claimed that the how to vote cards were tampered with. and has announced an investigation into the alleged interference. And he cited previous instances of the party being hacked. And it doesn't have any evidence, of course, but he said that the X feed was hacked, the how to vote cards were hacked. And I'm like, this is a train wreck. This is so embarrassing.
Yeah. I feel for Senator Babette in this moment. He's caught between a rock and a hard place, but I would like to see him distance himself from this rather, I mean, it's not even officially, it's not even his party, right? It's not even the same legal entity that he was elected under. I think for his own sake, he has another term to run. Senators get elected for 2 consecutive terms. He's got his second term ahead of him. I would have liked to have seen him probably told Clive Palmer, you know what, this sounds like a Clive problem.
Yeah.
That I think would have been the smarter thing for him to have done. And I do think it is a Clive problem. And I think what this is the billionaire mindset. Now not all billionaires are like this. This is a pretty unique Clive thing. There are a few others like it as well that just believe that they're God's gift to mankind. And I suspect that he would have said, no, I'm going to do all our how to vote cards. And then, I don't know, some intern would have done them somewhere and he would have gone, oh, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
And away that would have gone without the proper forethought and the proper strategy. And what's really interesting to me, the UAP previously in the past, they have not played well with the other parties. They have not played well with One Nation especially, but also not so much with the Libertarians, although to a lesser degree. And they have tended to say vote number 1 UAP and then vote number 2 Liberal Party. That's been their default position. And the reason why Palmer has done this, in my opinion, I will say, although I think it's fairly well substantiated, but I'll say, in my opinion, is because he was getting preferences back from the Liberal Party. And that's how he got Senator Ralph Babette elected in Victoria. And so he's never really played the team game alongside the other minor parties. We're seeing those chickens come home to roost now. And I had no particular love for Trumpeter Patriots already, just because of how they came to be and the fact that I just think Palmer should have sat this one out. But now with all of this, I will still include Trumpeter Patriots above the first of the major parties. So I'm going to put all the minor parties, right? I'm starting with the Libertarian Party because they're my jam, they're my people, that's my political philosophy as a Libertarian. Then it'll probably be between One Nation, People First, Family First, and then whatever others there may be. Then I will put Trumpeter Patriots just above the Liberal Party. And so I will include them. I don't think they're going to have any success. I think they are going to be a rounding error in this election, and that they will be eliminated long before One Nation, long before the Libertarians, and therefore their vote will be an irrelevance in any case. Yeah. But what an embarrassment. What an own goal.
Well, the frustration with this is it's our side of the fence, so it just makes everything else look like it's in disarray, which it's not.
No.
But the problem is those of us who pay close attention to it know it's not. But those who just read the headlines, see things in passing on social media, will look at this and go, "Oh my God, here we go, the right's imploding." It's not. These are all like storms in a teacup.
Let's not overstate how many people are actually paying attention to this at all. The vast majority of the Australian population don't know that Trumpeter Patriots exists, except for the fact that it's some weird billboard that they've ignored every time they've driven past it, right? That is the Trumpeter Patriots in the minds of most Australians. Most people are not aware of this how to vote card controversy. This is something that really only exists within our bubble.
Yeah. What I do find interesting, though, is obviously we've got pre-polling open, the early voting is open, and there's a lot of discussion. And I wonder if this is similar to The Voice. I'd like to be right on this. I don't know if I'm confident in what I'm about to say, but you know, when we had the referendum and we were voting for The Voice, there was all this pre-polling saying that it was unanimous. Australia wanted The Voice, and then of course we found out.
No, not so much actually. The polls did move against The Voice as time went on. So I actually made a prediction months before the vote happened that the vote would be abandoned, that they would walk away from it before it actually even got to a vote. Now I was wrong about that. But I was right in the sense that I predicted they would abandon the vote because it would be so obviously going to lose.
Yeah, okay.
And I was right that by the time the vote came, it was obviously going to lose. It was a question of by how much. And it lost by even more than I thought it was going to. Like I thought it was going to be bad, but it turned out to be even worse. But to be fair, the polls were indicating that before the election.
Yeah. With this, I mean, if you have a look at some of the pollsters, if you have a look at Sportsbet, they're saying Albanese's got it in the bag.
Yeah, and I disagreed with that early on when Dutton was still running on this policy of reducing expenditure on public servants, making them actually show up to work, firing 40,000 of them. I watched this divergence, this delta between public opinion and public polling happen in the US when I was there in 2015 before Trump's election. where there's a self-selection bias. People have to choose to stay on the line to answer the questions of the pollsters, or have to choose to respond. And there's a self-selection bias that goes on when there is a obviously socially acceptable choice and there's a socially unacceptable choice. The people that actually support the socially unacceptable choice are far less likely to respond to a pollster, which means that socially unacceptable choice polls even worse than whatever their real representation is. And so I predicted a Trump win in 2016 before the election had even happened, and sure enough, he won. And I was making a similar prediction for Dutton, that because the media were attacking him for things like firing 40,000 public servants and saying they had to work from home and doing all that stuff, that people were choosing not to respond to the pollsters. They were choosing not to stick their neck out and actually admit what their real opinion was. Once he abandoned any remaining principles, well, there's no longer a divergence. There's no longer anything to stand up for in that sense. So he lost whatever he might have had. Whatever that delta might have been is gone. And the polls are now probably pretty accurate.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. And as I said before, I do think Australians need to learn the hard way. There's a general apathy. We've talked about this a million times, but also just, I do think we are at a point where people are so self-focused and self-involved, not as in selfish, but they can't see past their nose. So even though it's the same in COVID, and I found this really interesting. We talked about the laptop class. We talk about small business. If you weren't directly impacted, you didn't have any reason to object to the lockdowns. You didn't have any reason to stand up or protest.
Yeah.
What my frustration, and I don't know if this is naivete, ignorance, just blatant stupidity, it's probably a combination of all the above. I think Australians will need to see us truly slip our living standard, truly slip to a point where it's so obvious. And then it'll be like how did this happen?
And it'll be 20 years too late at that point. And I think you're absolutely right. And let me buttress that by saying, when I was out on the streets protesting against the COVID lockdowns, there were two groups that were overrepresented. One was Christians. Christians massively, as a proportion of the population versus as a proportion of protesters, massively overrepresented. But also first and second generation immigrants from Eastern Europe. Massively overrepresented. Why? Because they have a cultural memory of what living under tyranny actually looks and feels like. In Australia, we don't have a real cultural memory. We only have Hollywood. And in Hollywood, it's very obvious. They make it very obvious. In real life, it's actually much more subtle. Tyranny is actually very boring in comparison to Hollywood. It's done with paperwork and death by 1,000 cuts. And so Eastern Europeans could see very clearly what most Australians could not, because they have that cultural memory. Now, we've been called the lucky country for a long time. And I don't remember the name of the author who wrote the book, The Lucky Country, but it actually wasn't intended as a compliment. It was actually an insult. He was basically saying these people are lazy. These people don't care. They're not actually that great, but because of geography and history and timing and natural resources, they are incredibly fortunate. They're incredibly lucky. The problem is our luck is running out because our incompetence is now overcoming our luck. We've only got so much luck, and our level of incompetence has exceeded that now. And we have no cultural memory of anything other than being lucky. Which means we're going to have to go all the way down the rabbit hole and experience the worst before we actually go, oh, that can happen to us.
Which is incredibly frustrating. And I mean, I look at a lot of stuff. I give Gen Z a hard time. I think every generation does that to the generation under them. But having said that, my experience with Gen Z, the reason I have this stereotype in my head is because that's the experience I have. So I'll give you an example. This is such a small example, but it's pretty indicative. I'm doing a lighting workshop on Saturday. And for this lighting workshop, I always get a couple of models. Now, when it comes to models, there's models and then there's models, right?
You didn't ask me.
I'm going to break everyone's
Sorry,
camera.
did you all see that laugh? Did you?
Were you expecting a compliment from me? It's almost impossible.
I'm starting to side with that politician you dressed down out the front. I'm starting to feel sorry for him.
Everyone's going to think I'm such a bitch.
That's the real agenda of this podcast. It's like, you think you know Carly? I'll teach you about Carly.
Really like.
All right, sorry, I did interrupt you.
So I was trying to find some models. Now, I wish I could afford Chadwick models. They're very expensive, and also they don't want to come do like that kind of stuff. And that's totally fair. So I try and find an up-and-comer. and it's usually someone young. Great,
Yep,
awesome.
yep.
Anyway, in the past, I normally put up a little ad going, hey guys, looking for models, let me know if you're interested. And then, I'm in my head trying to think of cool lighting scenarios and a cool story to teach my students how to do some lighting.
And essentially, they're going to volunteer some time in return
Correct.
for
It's
some
TFP.
really good portfolio building
Correct.
photographs.
If I was paying a model, that would be fine, and they would be expected to work as a model. But when you're an inexperienced person, people think modeling is easy.
No.
For the record,
No.
it is one of the hardest professions. There's models, and then there's people who think they're models. Very, very clear distinction between the two. Models know how to act, but in a way that looks effortless. It's very hard.
To actually do what they do, if you've ever been, because I've been on photo shoots with
Yeah.
models, male and female, and when you stop and look at a magazine rack at a supermarket sometime, a news agency, and have a look at the ridiculous poses that these people are in, and yet they look fantastic.
Yeah.
Now that's partly gym and diet and looking after themselves, and there's a lot of hard work in that. But actually, there is something. There is that the thing you said before about some people have it and some people
Yeah.
don't with photography. The same is true with modeling.
Oh,
I
100%.
actually have a lot of sympathy for these really arrogant people. No, you don't have it. Oh yes, you could be a model, but you don't have it. I get it.
Well,
yeah.
it's true. It's no different to someone going on American Idol thinking they can sing and someone going, no, dude, someone should have told you.
Yeah.
I've shot thousands of people in my
Sure.
time, and a lot of these people want to be
Charlie,
models.
the mass murderer.
Yeah, that's me, the
Yeah.
psychopath.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's people I can say they're honestly a needle in a haystack. These people who truly know how
Who
to
have
do
it.
it.
Who
There's a
have it.
communication through the eyes. It's an unspoken thing. It's a dance between the photographer and the model. And when it works brilliantly, the images are just beyond.
They pop. They jump off
Anyway,
the page.
my point is, I was happy to shoot some entry-level people, and I love shooting a dancer because they usually know how to move, right? Anyway, I had quite a few people saying, yep, I'm interested. Now, in the ad, it was an ad, please make sure you are available this Saturday from 10 till 2. You must be available and also have transport to the studio. Please do not apply if you cannot. I would have thought that was pretty straightforward. Anyway.
But you're expecting people to actually read.
So I get like 4 or 5 people I'm trying to lock these people in quickly. So I just take the first 5 that applied. And I was like, all right, cool, have a look at your photos, blah, blah, blah. And the 2 that I was like, all right, yeah, you look great, message them. And they're both like, yep, amazing, so fun, cool, awesome, let's do it. Within like 2 hours, one of them goes, oh, actually, I don't know if I want to do it. I'm like, fine, totally fair, absolutely, no worries. And then the second one's like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing, but I like double booked myself and like I've got something already on the Saturday. And I'm just sitting there going, this shouldn't be this hard. Apply for it if you want it. If you don't, no dramas, no pressure. And also maybe check your calendar before you tell the person you want to do it. Yeah. And then this person's like, oh, I still really want to shoot with you. Can we do another time? I'm like, no.
No, this is when the workshop is on.
Literally no. And I'll never work with you because you're a time waster. Like this is basic shit.
Yeah.
But Gen Z is like this. They are flighty, they're flaky, they are unorganized. Not all of them, but many. And this is what happens. Like people wonder why these Gen Z guys are taking up socialism. It is so easy to be a socialist. You just let everyone do everything for you.
But what that means is that the people that the Gen Zers that do actually just get their shit together,
they're going to be unstoppable.
and get the basics right, are going to have a superpower.
Oh, they're going to be amazing.
They will be practically superheroes.
Don't get me wrong. I've definitely encountered a few of those.
Yeah.
But it's interesting in Australia that like this is something that I had a discussion with my mentor. I want to be one of the big ones.
Yep.
That is the goal. And I am realistic enough to know it's going to take me a good 10 more years to get there. This is not something that you just wake up and go, I'm going to be one of the best photographers in the world.
Yeah. And for context, for those that are maybe listening for the first time, you're saying it's going to take you 10 more years, having already won multiple relatively prestigious international awards for your photography.
They mean shit.
Not 10 years from 0 to one of the big ones, 10 years from halfway up the totem pole to one of the big 100%.
100%. Like at the moment, I'm just like, I'm in the slop with all the other good photographers.
Yeah.
You want to be great. It's going to take a level of just sacrifice.
Yeah, but I just want
honest.
to give people that context because it's a little bit like me with 16 years of political commentary to finally get to the point where I'm one of the big ones in Australia now. I'm not the biggest by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm getting close to being one of the big ones in Australia. I'm getting close to being able to pay my bills doing it, which is a wonderful, wonderful change. But that's 16 years of developing the skills, the understanding, the knowledge, and sticking with it, persevering.
This is the big one, sticking with it. And it's interesting because with my mentor yesterday, he, like I said, I'm not going to say who it was, but they're very well established. And I said, I want the big ones.
Yeah.
Like I want the big fish.
Yeah.
How do I get there? I just asked him point blank. I was like, how do I get there? He's like, no one will open that door for you.
Yeah.
You have to knock it down.
You got to kick it down. Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I knew the answer, but I was just like, I want to hear what he did, right? And he said there was no clear road in Australia. Australia gatekeeps everything. And you guys out there in your own industries, you probably see this yourself. Australians do not like to share. They do not like to send the ladder back down. And once they feel like they're established or they have a bit of a chokehold on their industry, there is no way they're letting the door open to the next generation.
We're a bunch of cunts.
We are.
Yeah.
We are.
Yeah.
In America, and I know this because I speak to Americans all the time, and they're like, Carly, just let us know when you're here. We'll open the door. We'll roll out the carpet for you. Not roll, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
no, absolutely.
I'll introduce you to someone I know who can help you do the thing. Blah, blah, blah. Great. Australia, it's just no chance.
I will say there is a caveat with America. There are people who will do that. And so, for example, Sam Sorbo did that with me. Amazing. I ended up at Mar-a-Lago for no good reason. There was no reason why they benefited from me being there. But they just went, hey, we're going there. You can come with us. Bang. In I am. But there is another side to the Americans, which is they will help you if there's money in it.
Yeah, that too.
So there is kind of the two, but there are many
But
Americans
that's smart
who
business,
will,
I would
correct.
say.
And also, I'm an advocate of the profit motive.
Yeah.
If something doesn't make more money by you doing it this way rather than that way, then that's the market telling you that there's no more
I
value
agree.
doing it over here.
The thing I love about Americans is they're so open about the fact that they're chasing money.
Correct.
Great.
Correct. And a lot of Aussies have issues with that. And I'll admit I used to have issue with that until I actually began to realize, no. If something isn't worth more money by us working together, we become worth more.
Yeah.
Then that means we're not adding value by working together and we should go find somebody else that we do add value with.
Altruism has no place in business. Not to say that you can't do good things with business,
Yeah.
but if you're running from a bleeding heart strategy, you're just going to run yourself into the ground.
Correct.
You need to be able to see a way of not only becoming financially stable to be able to keep doing what you're doing, but you have to have profit. If there is no profit, there's no viability in what you're doing.
Anyway, we've sort of segued. We were just talking about the fact that Australians are a bunch of cunts.
Okay, so the reason, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
You know, in Australia, we don't have anywhere near the industry that overseas does. You know, that's a population thing. It's also a distance thing. But it's also, Australians shoot themselves in the foot.
It's an attitude thing.
We make everything so much harder than it needs to be. In Europe, a lot of people are like, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. In America, they always figure it out. In Australia, it seems a bit hard.
No.
I don't want to do that.
And I mean, tall poppy syndrome feeds into that because there's actually fear of success. Here in Australia, while you're the battler, we love you. The minute you're successful, we're going to turn on you. And it's psychologically, we all know that. And that breeds a fear of success.
Eat our own.
If I actually get good at this, people are going to be mean to me. They're going to be nasty. They're going to turn on me.
And they're going to question whether or not you deserve what you got.
Sure.
But it was interesting because in this industry, like I said, I really want to be one of the big fish. And I just sort of laid it out in front of myself. I was like, all right. This is another 10 years to get where I want to go. And then once I'm there, I have to like be able to sustain it. And I was like, okay, what does this look like? I need to be all in. I need to be the sniper, as I said when we opened.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of Australians have that tenacity because it's bred out of us. We are like, she'll be right. I hate that saying, she'll be right. She's not right. She requires effort. And that she'll be, that's what Gareth always says, she'll be. That is actually to our detriment. Our laid back attitude is to our detriment. And you hear people say all the time, oh, you need work-life balance. Sure, at some point, but you also just need to hammer the accelerator at some point too. And Australians are like, I don't want to just, no, I want to be able to have my weekends. I want to be able to go to bed early. I want to be able to watch my Netflix TV show. And then we get angry that we don't have success.
Yeah.
So there's parts about Australia that I utterly resent.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got on this topic.
Well, he that sleeps in during the season for sowing goes hungry in the season for harvest.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, well, that's Proverbs. Book of Proverbs.
I'm just looking at the time, and we said we'd
so-
stay on track.
Well,
We're
we're going
20
to
minutes.
we're going to try and stay under 2 hours
right.
this time.
Let's have a chat about the covid.gov website from Trump.
Oh, I love this. I did a whole video about this.
Did you?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Firstly, forget what's on it. They put a lot of effort into the design. And okay, that's template, blah, blah, blah. But it's a nice feeling website that functions really well. And the layout of the information is very carefully constructed. It's simple. The headline tells you what it's about. So even if you bounce, even if you just go to the page and then immediately leave, you've already got an idea of what it's about.
Yeah.
Then 5 easy to read dot points at the top, super, super accessible, not creating a barrier to people, very easy to consume. Then there's the map, nice little bit of visual, doesn't actually tell you anything. Of course, the Wuhan wet market is close to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Like, yeah, of course they're close to each other. Doesn't tell you anything, but it looks pretty. And then they start to get into heavier information below that. But by now, the casual user who's not ready for the heavy and they're going to leave, they already know exactly what you're talking about. They've already got the message. You go through, there's 4 dot points, and then there's a nice pretty picture of Fauci and a bit of graphic design. Then there's 4 more heavy dot points. They break it up with a video. Then there's 5 more heavy dot points below that. They're really carefully breaking this up. What it speaks to me of is a website that, yeah, they put some effort into the template and some design, but then I think they focus grouped it. I think this has gone through a full Daniel Andrews messaging workshop.
It's very organised.
And they have really thought through this. And I was trying to think, why? Why would they make a website out of this?
They're going to prosecute him.
I don't think they can prosecute Fauci. I think Daniel Andrews is laying the groundwork to go after the World Health Organization.
Daniel Andrews?
Excuse me. President Trump, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for insulting you by actually taking your name.
That's it. You're never going back to Mar-a-Lago now.
Taking your name in vain. No, I think President Trump's going to go after the World Health Organization. And I think that website actually lays out the groundwork and links the World Health Organization and all of their bad recommendations with the House Oversight Committee's report on COVID.
Yes, I think that could happen. But I think there's 2 things here. The auto pen debacle. Did Joe Biden sign those pardons, and therefore are they real?
Legally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, he was only pardoned by the federal government, not the state governments. So if there seems to be clear nefarious undertones of what Fauci did, which of course there was, he can be prosecuted by the states.
It's an interesting thought. I haven't gone through that. I'd need to go and do a bit of study on that. Is that something that you've sort of found verified?
I watched Tim Pool's take on this, and Tim Pool is pretty.
Yeah, he generally does his research. Yeah,
Well, he's pretty good. He was saying that they're going to go after Fauci, and I think they are. I think Ron DeSantis has already talked about investigations.
Yeah.
And if you have a think, some of the red states, if they go after Fauci, like only one of them needs to put him in jail.
Yeah, correct.
But there's so much more to Fauci that was like he's part of the AIDS thing as well. Like,
so I've got RFK Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci, sitting in my pile of to be read. I haven't got to it yet, but it's a massive, thick thing. There's a lot of history there.
You are a masochist because I see things like that. I'm like, I cannot bring myself to read those. Give me the Cliff Notes.
I would love to have the time. I need to get rich enough to have a big team around me, not so I can live a life of luxury, but just so that I can only work 4 hours a day on just the stuff that I have to do, so I can spend another 12 hours a day reading.
You know, it's funny you say that because I just want to read, and it's so hard to find the time where you are not interrupted.
Yeah.
And then at night time, I'm just too tired to take the information in.
Yeah, you're not focused.
But no, I think there is definitely going to be some state level legal action, and the federal pardon doesn't shield him from that. But also, he perjured himself. He was in the Senate inquiry, basically saying that the NIH didn't fund gain of function, and they did. And so he's perjured himself, which is also a crime. So there's a few things here, whether or not they go after him or not. What I find interesting here is that, you know, for everyone it's like, oh, they'll never be held accountable. I think they're trying, but the one thing, and Dan Bongino came out saying something similar today about something totally different, but talking about how people want the action immediately. And I get it because everyone's bloodthirsty. But the issue is if they get it wrong, they can't do it again.
Correct.
This is a case where, as annoying and frustrating as it is, we need to tread carefully. It needs to be done correctly.
But also consider we're not just trying to hold an individual accountable. We're actually trying to turn the entire tide. Because we've had decades of people not being held accountable.
Yes.
No one has meaningfully been held accountable in America, Australia, or the UK.
They might get pushed out, but there's no real
decades. That is normal now. And so when we say we're going to hold that person accountable, we're not just actually trying to get accountability on that person. We are trying to redirect. We're trying to change the momentum and the direction of our entire political culture so that it becomes possible to hold someone accountable.
Yeah.
Now, once we get the first person, it becomes easier to get the next and the next and the next. Getting the first one is almost impossible and has been impossible up until now. We are trying to do the impossible.
Yeah.
And that's why it takes a long time.
This is such a segue, but I've just opened X because I was going to do like the quick fire because we've got 15 minutes.
What?
I forgot. I wanted to bring this up so bad, but like we've talked about him so much, I was like, I can't stomach this look anymore. But this is literally just popped up on X. Dan Andrews.
So what about him this time?
You know how he loves his golf, and he's been trying to get him to Moonar Links for a long time. This is sensational. Okay, so do you know how he somehow got into Moonar Links the last week?
No, I missed that.
Okay, so he's desperate to get into one of the uppity golf courses. And from what I understand, Moonal Links is probably one of the better ones.
It's I believe it's one of the the PGA certified
Yeah,
one.
it's
things.
like
I'm not into
proper-
golf. Don't at me if you're into golf and I got that wrong. But it's like
I
it's
think
a
it's one of
high-end.
the prestigious ones.
Yeah.
So Daniel Andrews obviously wants to go play that. And like you said, he had friends in high places. And he had a friend who was a member, whose wife was also a member. And the only way Daniel Andrews could get in, because his membership was rejected, was for this friend to change his wife's name to Daniel Andrews. So he couldn't get in there on merit. He had to get in there by friggin' changing some documents. That doesn't sound like Dan Andrews, does it?
And he actually bothered
did
to go
it.
through with it.
He did it.
How detached from reality do you have to be to go, these people actively rejected me, actively said, no, F you, don't come back, and I'm just going to sneak my way in anyway.
So he snuck in through the back door, which is very unbecoming of Daniel Andrews. But Moonar Links has just turned around and says, no, you're not coming. You're no longer welcome.
And I hope they terminate the membership of the two people that facilitated
Well, it's
that
interesting.
fraud.
So this is Herald Sun. I have to get my phone because
Okay.
I do sadly have a Herald Sun membership just so I can read these stories.
I feel really bad. I actually have to go and get memberships to all of these news sites
Well,
just
it's
to
just
be able
so
to do my
like
job.
when the I need to be able to actually read.
I know, and
so
I feel bad because I don't want to give money to The Age or Financial Review or even Herald Sun. I
this
don't want to
just
give
came
money.
out literally like 3 minutes ago, so I'm going to read this. Okay, so
Breaking news, everybody.
Breaking news. Daniel Andrews is no longer a member at Mornington Peninsula Golf Club. It's been a very short-lived tenure for Daniel Andrews at Moonar Links Golf Resort after his rich list pal helped him become a member. Now the former premier is no longer on the books. It's been a very short-lived tenure, blah, 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 blah. Sorry. As reported by Page 13 last week, Andrew's good friend, rich lister Max Beck, had got his mate in the back door as a nominee member at the Mornington Peninsula Golf Club. Page 13 understands that property baron Beck is a foundation member at Moonar Links and recently switched out his wife's name on a membership, replacing her with Daniel Andrews. It would have cost the ex-premier $3,000 to get in, and while sneaking in the back door may be frowned upon, apparently it doesn't break any rules. I'm reading the article. Q considerable arguably scrapped that, frothing and feverish backlash from members and the golfing community. Now, I did actually read the Facebook post about this on Moonar Links. So Moonar Links posted something totally unrelated, and the comments were scathing.
So for people who need context, potentially outside of Victoria, one of the few, communities within Victoria to really push back on Daniel Andrews when he locked everyone down was the golfing community. They were outraged because they're like, well, we're already socially distanced. There's a few of us in the middle of a massive effing park, basically, enjoying our outdoors and some sunshine and some fresh air. Sam Newman, who's a big media personality and particularly in relation to football, but he went really public on the golf side of things. And I reached out to him, and to his credit, he chatted with me about would he be willing to come and join the protests against the lockdowns. And he said, look, no, that's not, he's not going to do that. He's going to stay focused just on the golf stuff. Fair enough. He's allowed to make that choice. I disagree, but he can make that choice. But the anger in the golf community towards Daniel Andrews was more public. They were more outspoken and more willing to defy him. And I love the fact that he's an avid golfer and he is now copping backlash from that.
Well, it's interesting. The article, and this is the thing, right? We talked before, like karma comes in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
He may never be behind bars. I hope he is, but he may not. But this is punishment for him. Golf is important to Daniel. And he is...
But not being worshipped is punishment for him.
Well, yeah, and he's persona non grata. Like, he used to have the key to the city.
Yeah.
He can't walk around in public.
Yeah. There
There is no way he can just go grab breakfast at a cafe.
Did we talk about when he tried to do he did an event in Box Hill for the Chinese?
Yeah.
And they had literally just had to exclude anyone that didn't look Chinese. They were racially profiling people who were coming into the event because they knew that Daniel Andrews cannot show his face in public. They have to vet the people coming in.
It's interesting because I'm just reading the rest of this article and they talk about how the members of Moonar Links were just up in arms and there was a huge backlash to the membership committee. And also apparently he's a member at Kingston Heath. And when he's on the green, the members walk off. So it's interesting. He is being punished, albeit in like weird ways, but you know, you've got to take the wins where you see them.
Yeah. And just recognize it does take time. We are trying to accomplish the impossible. We have not, as a culture, as a society, we have not successfully held accountable anyone at this level in my lifetime. No one at this level in my lifetime has ended up in prison for their crimes. Now, I would argue that no one has committed crimes as egregious as Daniel Andrews did. But we are trying to change the entire culture. And the powers that be, even the new ones, even let's say the Liberal Party win in Victoria at the next Victorian state election, they do not want to bring charges against Daniel Andrews because they do not want to set a precedent where they could have charges brought against them.
Yeah.
After they leave power. The new people in power do not want to hold the old people in power accountable. That's not a part of the culture there, and that's what we're trying to change. This is a long-term project.
Yeah. Okay, next one. There is absolute trouble afoot with Jordan Peterson. Are you clued into what's happening here?
No, not at all.
So Jordan Peterson was on Joe Rogan recently,
Yep.
I think like 3 days ago, and he's talked about how both on the left and the right, the people who belong to the dark triad, those who have psychopathic tendencies, go where the power is moving. So we saw this on the left.
Yeah.
And I watched it because I was like, hang on a minute, I need context for this. And I don't think Jordan was wrong, but I think this is where people got caught up on it. They believe Jordan was talking specifically about Candace Owens. Now, obviously, Candace, Jordan, both part of the Daily Wire, there's some bad blood, whatever. Jordan has been on the record as calling Candace a Pharisee.
Right.
So on Joe Rogan, Jordan was talking about how there is a rise because the right is taking back power, that a lot of those narcissistic Machiavellian types are moving across to the right because they go where the power is and they adopt the colours and the flags of the movement that's popular.
Correct.
And that's just called bad actors, right? They're on every party.
That's an accurate observation. I actually I did come across this briefly and I'd chosen to let it mostly pass me by, but I'm surprised at the attempt to connect that to Candace Owens because Candace Owens does not fit the description of what Jordan Peterson was talking about. Jordan Peterson is talking about people who are jumping on now or in the last year or two as it reached the ascendancy.
Yeah.
Candace Owens has been on that side of politics for, her entire career, 10 years or more. So I can't see how you would connect Candace Owens in with Jordan Peterson's comments.
I think there's a lot of people who clasp at straws and just say, and this is something that's always bothered me just in people in general. I'm a blunt person and that bothers some people, but I'd rather be blunt because what I say is what I mean. Very few people communicate like that. A lot of people, particularly Aussies, are passive aggressive.
Yeah.
So they'll imply something and hope that you derive the true meaning. Who can be fucked talking like that? If I don't like you, you're going to know. But if you say something I agree with, I'll be like, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
My bluntness or my abruptness might be abrasive, but you'll never be questioning how does she feel?
Yeah.
Whereas there's a lot of things about the way we communicate that's all like, I think this is what they meant. No, usually people say what they mean unless they are trying to be nefarious.
Passive aggressive.
There's definitely parts about Candace that I find abrasive, but I also appreciate someone who has that sort of tenacity to go after the story she goes after.
What I will say, what I observed in the brief bit of the clip of Jordan Peterson was that I think Jordan has gone even further into this sort of off with the fairies is a bit too much. That's saying it too strongly. But I think a lot of the stuff that he's now philosophizing on doesn't have the practical application of things like his book 12 Rules for Life, right?
I think they're over academicizing, that's not a word, of all these things.
I think we're watching him. We've watched Douglas Murray. I was going to say the toffee pommy accented guy, but you know what I mean. We're watching these guys where they were at the intellectual end of the culture and were celebrated for being so. And then they're going, I'm being celebrated for being academic and being detached and being aloof. I should be more of that. Well, no, you were celebrated because you were able to bring those ideas down to reality. And
yes.
I feel like what we're watching is some of these people beginning to lose that connection to reality.
I think they're trying to reestablish that prestige of academia because it has been dismantled by the left. The left have democratized academia to a point where you can now get a bachelor degree in gender studies and you can get a PhD for breakdancing. And I think Jordan, Douglas and their ilk are the people who want the Ivy League to still hold that level of gravitas that it used to have. I do believe. No?
Fuck them.
Well, I think that's what they want.
Yeah, well, sure. No. But I'm just saying, academia can go off.
I agree.
Can go and
but I think, this is the thing. If you're a lifetime academic like Jordan is and Douglas is, losing that prestige also waters down your accomplishments.
Yeah, but also, the rest of us live in the real world.
I totally agree.
A plumber is far more valuable to me than Douglas Murray is.
But if you can see the intentions and the motivations of people, it becomes a lot easier to understand what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Jordan's doing. He's released his own thing, Jordan Peterson University.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I wanted to join it because there's just some things that he touches on, not Jordan specifically. Have you looked at it? It looks really interesting.
Yeah, I've thought about joining because, like you, I do find it interesting. And I do find a lot of value in what Jordan has done. I'm just concerned that this recent inflection seems to be towards this.
We're finding enemies where there aren't enemies.
That's true. But I think we're seeing them actually abandon the effort to bring academia into reality for the plebs, and now they're having an academic sort of pissing contest between themselves.
Well, we saw that when we were at ARC, and I think I said that to you when we were there. I was like, it was cool to be there, but there has always been something that's alienated me from those kind of institutions.
Oh, sure.
I don't come from, like...
We're Aussies.
We're Aussies.
We're already outsiders for that.
I'm not posh.
That world. We're not in that world.
And this is something I said to Jordan when I was shooting him at the Savoy. I said... Because he said, you are incredibly intelligent. That's very obvious. He said something like that. He gave me a compliment. And I said, I know I'm not a dumbass, but when I'm in rooms like ARC... I feel spoken down to. That was my comment, something along those lines. And what I was saying to him is, I know I hold the same level of understanding. I know, like, intellectually I'm on your level, maybe not Jordan's level, but you know what I mean? But the way that you speak alienates me because I'm not fluent in your language.
So people who consider themselves to be intellectual love to develop their own language. Now, industries naturally develop their own language. Photographers talk about things that non-photographers don't understand.
Yeah.
You can have a conversation about lenses with someone, and an outsider is going, I have no idea. I literally don't understand what you said.
Have you seen that comedian on Instagram that does these skits about jargon?
No.
I'll have to show you.
You can look one up. So people having their own language is not automatically bad. But when someone talks to someone who's not in their own industry, someone who's self-aware and wants to actually communicate in good faith will not use that language. They will use layman's terms to explain the technical things, where they might use the technical terms with someone else from their own industry. And what we're watching is the likes of Jordan Peterson, who previously took academia and took these highfalutin concepts and brought them into reality. Now they're just talking about it amongst themselves and letting us be flies on the wall and watch.
Yeah.
There's a level of detachment that is entering now. The jargon is returning. The pissing contest has resumed.
Yes.
That's what concerns me. I see enormous value in what Jordan Peterson has done. I'm concerned that the value is diminishing.
I think you get to a point where, you've got to keep pushing that ground. And now it's getting to the point where everyone's sort of on the level of Jordan was maybe 10 years ago. It's like, well, I've got to keep leading this charge.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is as well, like, this is what happens with popular movements. There's people who are always considered the intellectuals, great. But there's always going to be that's where the majority of people are. So that people like Candace, Ian Carroll, Dave Smith, all of those people who may be questioning things. The reason the majority goes after these guys is because it's like they're asking questions that other people may have been asking themselves, like, hang on a minute, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
And the intellectuals are going, no, only we get to ask those questions. And so you're alienating people. I'm trying to find this thing because, God, it's funny. I followed him recently. Well, you would have seen his thing. But
I don't mean to alarm you, but we have now ticked over the 2-hour mark. So we might have to finish on this thing.
Okay. It's really funny. I've just got to find his bloody account. I hate it when this happens. I normally screenshot things just so I never... He's a comedian and he talks in jargon.
Let's all sit here and watch Carly
entertain people for a minute.
Through her phone. I'm doing my
best. I found him. Matt Lyons. That's who you got to follow.
I don't know the name.
Okay, he's just this American dude. I'm going to play one that makes funny sense.
How are people watching the podcast going to see it?
Well, I'm going to play it through the video, but I've got to find the funny one. Okay, so let's find one. Okay, every person who collects whiskey.
Okay, well, you're going to have to hold it near your microphone so that the auto editing switches to your camera and people can see it on your screen.
You're a whiskey wanker, are you not?
I am. I'm a wanker in all kinds of ways.
Okay.
You down to try some whiskeys and bourbons? I'll walk you through some of mine and my brother Pete's favorites of the collection. Fair warning, some are single, some are taken. A couple of them are on the rocks. Just messing. Scotch. Nice to meet you. A lot of people don't know this, but deciding between drinking it incognito versus al dente really just comes down to its verbiage and the type of glass. If you stick your nose right up into it and get a heavy dose of carcinogens, maybe just consider pouring it into a low ball. Could change the entire flavor portfolio. The one I've been rocking with recently is this triple malt dual income family-sized batch, meticulously barreled at altitude in the Dolomites. Right off the rip, you're slapped with this subtle soiree of simple syrup and pressure-treated lumber, which gives it such a well-endowed twang on the washout. JP Wigglesworth 45. I couldn't believe it. Saw this thing collecting dust on the top shelf at Hooch & Co. Cognacs. Sent my wife Brandy down there after work to pick it up.
Just sounds like a good Saturday night to me. I mean, that's
I just find him hilarious because anyone that's like super into their niche, that's what they sound like. They're just like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. He did a photography one ages ago that I just thought was such hysterical. But
it is that thing, and that's
jargon.
And that's fine if you're talking amongst yourselves. But we've talked before about people who communicate for the purpose of actually conveying information and being a part of the community, and those who communicate for the purpose of impressing you with how much they know. And I worry a little bit that some of these thought leaders are now moving towards that academic conversation with academics for academics. And if the hoi polloi observe our conversation, well, I guess we'll tolerate that.
Plebs.
The plebs.
I am the pleb.
Rather than actually saying, hey, these are the things that we discuss amongst ourselves in private, and now we're going to have a debate about it in a way that's accessible to the common man.
Well, and I always bring it back to Joe Rogan because it's the most easy example to understand. The reason Joe Rogan is because he is the layman. He might be a multimillionaire now, but he's so easy to talk to and to understand.
He built his entire brand off the word wow.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he does. He sits there and goes, wow.
And I think what the people or the intellectuals on the right, again, simplifying it, but the intellectuals on the right, we've already dismantled all the left stuff. We've dismantled woke. We've dismantled the gender stuff. We've dismantled the trans stuff. So now it makes sense that our attention's going over to things over here that might need to be dismantled because we're like, well, hang on a minute. There is a level of conservatism that no longer is appropriate for modern day. So how can we dismantle that? And I think a lot of that comes back to the prestige of the Ivy Leagues and the academia. There's parts of people who are like, okay, so academia has its role. Like, yes, you want your surgeon to have gone to uni, sure. But there's other things that don't necessarily require that kind of prestigious piece of paper. And so I don't think it's a bad thing for, like, as you and I have said, we're free speech absolutists. I want to hear these people because then I will decide for myself whether or not I want to listen to them.
I certainly don't think they should be stopped from sprouting their wankery, but I just find that their current wankery is far more
not them. I
detached.
mean, Jordan and Douglas and stuff want people like Dave Smith, for example, to not have their opinions. And
that's completely unacceptable in my view. Now, we do need to finish, but you just mentioned Joe Rogan.
Yes.
And have you noticed that it's Joe Rogan cancelling season again?
God, already.
Already. And I've still got my Trump is not my president decorations
No,
up.
I was still hanging out with Nilo and Zanazzi.
Yeah.
I thought we were still going after Teslas.
This is the world.
I can't keep up.
The world is moving fast these days. So yeah, it's officially Joe Rogan cancelling season again.
What do I need for that?
You shave your head.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And dye it blue or put a septum piercing? I can't keep
No,
up.
you shave your head to look like Joe Rogan.
Oh,
Yeah,
I thought I had to do
if I'm not sitting here with Joe Rogan across from me next week, I'll be very disappointed, Carly.
I'll get a ball cap just for the podcast.
Okay, sounds good.
One more thing to end on. We can talk about this next week, but I don't know anything about this. I've just seen it going around. I thought it was like bullshit.
This always terrifies me when you do this because what you're saying is you need to know about this thing.
Yeah, no, I think this kind of scares me, but like
Right.
we won't go into this now. The UK government to approve experiments to dim sunlight in an effort to fight climate change. Experiments to dim sunlight to fight global warming will be given the green light by the UK government within weeks. Outdoor field trials will include injecting aerosols into the atmosphere or brightening clouds to reflect sunshine, are being considered by scientists as ways to prevent runaway climate change. What the fuck?
Nothing could possibly go wrong.
What is England fighting the sun for? You don't have any. Fuck off.
I mean, well, Bill Gates, I believe, has sponsored some of these experiments in the past, and there's been, there's been sort of all this academic sort of talk about this. I mean, never before in human history has humans dicking around with nature gone wrong or backfired on us in any way. Never before have we had, for example, I don't know, just picking an absurd thought bubble out of the back of my mind, gain of function research into a virus has never caused humans any trouble at all. Dimming the sun, what could possibly go wrong? It is only the literal source of life and the only energy input that our entire ecosystem
But
has.
hang on, aren't we turning to solar as well? So I'm just trying to understand how this all
Well, I mean,
correlates.
this is a good point. We're going to have to increase the number of solar panels to get the same amount of power because they just turned the sun down a little bit.
Which will require more petrochemicals to make these things.
Oh, of course. Look,
It's all very confusing.
idea that humans are smart enough to actually figure these things out and then to get these things right is absurd. We have a long history of not doing that, of getting it very, very wrong. The idea that we can meddle in that and not make things so much worse.
What about the prophecy about the Pope dying? Have you heard this?
No.
Okay, we'll end on this, I promise. So
I don't believe. We're still going to be going in an hour.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's 1,000-year-old prophecy.
Get comfortable, everybody. This is a 4-hour podcast coming at you.
That the Pope, the next Pope, who there's 3 of them in contender. I can't remember what the name is, but the prophecy is after this next Pope that's going to be elected, who has the name that's evading me, Jesus will come back because it's Armageddon. This is the implosion of humankind. That's a prophecy. And I was like, you know what, Jesus, it's about fucking time, dude. Come back and straighten this shit out.
Let's just
we're not doing a good job.
Wind it up. Yep.
Like, I don't know, dude. Like, press the reset button. Yep. I reckon this is what happened to Atlantis and the Egyptians. We got this far and they went, nah, reset. Boom.
Yep. Jesus, simple choice. Come back and wind it up or just send a meteorite. Like, your choice. Either way is good.
Like the problem with a meteor, and I've thought about this far more than I should have.
Right.
I blame all the doomsday movies when we were growing up, you know, Twister, Armageddon, all that.
Yeah.
By the time the meteors in our atmosphere are already dead, because that's like it's happening too quick. I want to see the shit. I want to see it go down. I want to see that super volcano go up. Like they talk about Yosemite going up. I need to see it with my own eyes.
Here's a good one. What about a massive meteorite has a direct hit with the moon, causing the moon to collapse down onto the earth in massive chunks over time? Like, because
it would happen too quick.
No. It could potentially take a couple of weeks for because it'd just get shifted towards the impact would just
start blocking out the sun.
Well, it'd just start moving towards the earth very slowly. But now that it's suborbital, it will get dragged in and eventually.
Would it be slow though? Isn't it the way that gravity works? If you knock something, it just keeps going, and if you knock it with enough velocity, it'll.
Sure, but the moon's massive, so you hit it at very high speed with a meteorite, and it's only going to shift the velocity of the moon very slightly. And so it'll still do lots and lots of loops. It'll be getting lower and lower. And the tides, as a result, will get higher and higher. So you'll have these massive tidal wave floods just crossing over continents. And
this is a great movie.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the crust of the earth would probably begin to break up. So you would have volcanoes, you would have floods just crashing over the coasts, and the moon just looming larger and larger. And then in the end, yes, it would come crashing down at phenomenal velocity. But that wouldn't initially, you could hit it with a meteorite and it would still take weeks potentially to actually just begin to come down and then eventually.
If we're going down in a blaze of glory, I want to be able to have a front row seat. Like, just send me up. I'll sit there. I'll watch it.
If the moon is coming down to the earth, everyone has a front row seat.
I don't think we're going to go that way. No. Remember Men in Black where they hold that thing?
Yeah.
I think it's like that. Jesus, whoever comes down and goes, enough. This experiment always goes wrong. You guys always lose everything. God, we give you everything and you fuck it up every time. That's it. Reset.
Well, I just hope that it's not Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and it turns out the answer was 42 and we were just asking the wrong question.
Yeah, I do think there'll be something like that because, humans are dumb. We always fuck it up.
We are way dumber than we give ourselves credit for. And on that piece of cheery news, we really need to wind up.
I'm insulting everyone. Mm-hmm. See, I insult all people equally.
Equally. We are equal opportunity offenders.
So don't be offended by anything I say because I offend everyone.
Offend everyone. Yep. If everyone's offended, no one's offended.
Correct. All right. On that note, follow the new channel at the Oddcast HQ. Follow you at Topher Field. Follow me at Carlz J Soda. And share this goddamn podcast.
Please do. And also, can we get a round of applause for the Roadcaster video that has just single-handedly edited this entire podcast and recorded it whilst we've been sitting here not touching a button?
It seems too simple. I don't want something to have gone wrong, but it feels too easy.
It feels too easy. Well, we're going to find out very soon.
I'm skeptical.
We're going to unplug that hard drive from the little Roadcaster video, plug it into my laptop, and then I will prove to you, because I did test it yesterday.
Did you plug that in?
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. If it's not plugged in, it won't allow you to record. Or it's all happening. It's just breathe. Breathe, Carlz, breathe. Just breathe.
Technology is not this simple. I refuse to believe.
This is the thing. This has changed my life. Okay. This piece of kit has completely changed my life.
All right. Well, on that note, guys, if you don't see this podcast, this is why. But then you wouldn't know. So, all right. See you guys.
Bye. I have to hit the button thing. Just hang on. 3, 2, 1.